Ellie, how are you?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Lincoln, how are you doing? That's a nice surprise.
I'm doing great. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, Uzi, how are you doing?
Everything's going well. You see the Tesla AI post today?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We have a lot to talk about. Please head over to the YouTube channel through the link at the top of our screens and hit that like button. And let me know your code check number in YouTube live chat. Treff Richard says code check number 33. Nice. Patch Penny 34. All right. Alexander, how you doing? How is Europe?
I'm doing pretty well. It's storming outside, so that's not good. So I can't be out running today, sadly.
You must be really excited about the Tesla AI team's detailed update on V13. So Ashok said that they expect actually smart summon in Europe, China, etc.
Yeah, wouldn't it be amazing that Europe get ass before Cybertruck does?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Sorry to. What's your
Coffee
bubble there?
bet?
When do you expect? Let's see. When do you expect actually smart summon on 1,000 vehicles, 1,000 Teslas?
I mean, it would probably happen pretty fast. I don't think they have any beta testers here in Europe. Maybe they have like employees and stuff. But I wonder how they will like have the framework for AS here, because as it is now, summon, you can only use it while being within 5 meters of the car. So I don't see how AS would be practical in that sense. So they must widen the circle somewhat for it to be usable, I guess.
We have About Tesla on the board now. Let's get an update from About Tesla. Jessica Kirsch says she is number 53, code check number. If you want to head over to and join Jessica Kirsch in live chat, you can do so through the link at the top of our screens. About Tesla, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well. So we have a lot to discuss on the Tesla AI front today. What was your, first of all, Ashok mentioned that they rolled out the latest version to a number of vehicles. Was that close to what you were expecting?
Yes, it's. I think he said like 50,000
Right.
cars, which is depending on what you count, is about anywhere around 1 or 2% of the fleet in the US and Canada, just roughly. So I think that's the stats that Tesla 5 shows. They're a little bit higher, like close to 3%, but that's might be just because the people who use FSD are more likely to be on Tesla 5.
That's right. So you said Tesla. Let's get a kind of this. Let's use this for future reference as a kind of recalibration. So Tesla 5 obviously is installed on Teslas owned by people who are more early adopters, who are more interested in detail, and it may not reflect necessarily the fleet-wide data. So you're saying on Tesla 5, it showed what, 3 to 4 or 4 to 5%?
No, it's close to 3%.
Okay, and according to Ashok, it was 1%, 2%, right?
Do you know the exact number of Teslas in US and Canada?
I don't, but I'm guessing it's somewhere between 3 and 3.5 million.
Yeah, so if we look at, let's see, let me do the math just a second.
Yeah, so he says, where is that 50,000 figure?
So for
Yeah.
example, if we assume 3 million, then it's 1.5% approximately.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have a good idea. So it could be about half as much then. I mean, Tesla 5 could be pretty ahead of the fleet-wide data then. Anyway, this is just one data point anyway. End-to-end highway has shipped to about 50,000 customers with 12.5.6.1. And he says full rollout of end-to-end highway driving to all AI4 users targeted for early next week, including enhancements in stop smoothness, less annoying bad weather notifications, and other safety improvements. What other takeaways did you take from this about Tesla?
Well, there are many interesting points there, but staying on this version, I think it will be actually not 6.1, it will be 6.2 that goes wide next week. Ashok did mention that there is a 0.2 version coming pretty soon. So that's what I think will go wide.
Okay, great. So that's next week. And now, what about the comments around? So actually, Smart Summer release to Europe, China, and other regions of the world. When do you think that's going to happen?
If you notice, it is mentioned in the list, but they didn't put any time frame on it.
Yeah.
It's coming, so it might be coming, next month, or might be coming next year. So unlike other things, there was no specific time frame mentioned.
Yeah. But I don't want you to say that to Alexander before I have a coffee bet with him in place. So Alexander thinks it's going to happen this year. I think it's probably going to happen next year. Alexander, is that right?
No soup for you about Tesla.
Okay. Well, we have Meta on the board too now. So let's dig into the V13. First of all, Meta, do you have any comments around the 12.5.6.1 being shipped to 50,000 going wide next week?
I think it's exciting. What specific comment are you looking for?
Nothing, just anything kind of that you want to point out on that front. I think people are more interested in learning about V13, but there's one comment here that I thought maybe you can help us here. I think you would be a good person to talk about this. Is the improved
Oh, sorry.
12.5.x? Go ahead.
Before you continue, I do want to answer your earlier question, if we can stick to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think something of note that people should observe is this release is going out to a lot of cars, hardware 3 included. That's important. The notion that it's going to be challenging, they always have to do a reduction, it's a big lift to get things to support on hardware 3 is not accurate. However, when they were talking about in case it takes a big lift, I think it's valid to say there are unknown unknowns that could crop up, but I think it's important to highlight that that is not the high probability case, that most releases will probably go out to all hardware.
Okay, great. All right. Improved 12.5.x models for AI3 city driving. So do you think that's that's happening because of the training on AI4 and Tesla's able to push even improved models to AI3, or do you think this is just AI3 models, like models designed for AI3 being trained more further? Eda?
Yeah, I'm trying to, do you mind asking that a different way?
Yeah, so in what's coming next, Tesla AI team says improved 12.5.x models for AI3 city driving. Is that because Tesla is using data from AI4 cars and distilling it to run on AI3, or is Tesla just taking more further training of AI3 car data?
I don't think we can infer which one it is from that. I would suspect it's just AI3 data still, because from what I am interpreting, it's just a better sampling of data of the data set. What you do is you send out a release, you see where it's weak, then you write triggers for that slice of traffic, you collect lots of data, you try to sample good examples. Think again of the stop signs. Very few people actually follow the NHTSA stop. They have to then find the users that are actually doing that properly, segment that out, get some examples of users doing it improperly, and then train the model to say, this is good, this is bad, and make sure that that doesn't cause other adverse behavior in other situations, validate that, and then ship it. That's what takes the time.
Okay, got it. When do you think data, sorry, let's go to about Tesla. About Tesla?
I would like to take a moment and clarify the versions, which versions we have and which cars are getting them, if you don't mind, because it's kind of confusing. There are so many versions out there. So basically, there are. We should look at probably the third digit. That's probably the most telling. So 12.5.6, 12.5.5, and 12.5.4. And then the fourth digit is just changing because they release a minor update. So basically, those three versions go to completely different types of cars. So 12.5.5 goes exclusively to Cybertrucks. 5.6, 12.5.6 so far went only to hardware 4 cars. So there are no hardware 3 cars on that version yet. And it's not expected based on the what they posted today. And then hardware 3 cars, the only update they are getting is 12.5.4. And there is a new version of it, 12.5.4.2, which is now rolling out. A bigger wave went out this morning, like overnight. So more hardware 3 cars are getting this update. It's not exclusive to hardware 3. So this version actually is available on some hardware 4 cars as well. But hardware 3 cars, this is the only version they are getting. So for example, they are not getting the end-to-end on highway yet. So that's only for hardware 4 so far. And based on what was posted today, it looks like hardware 3 cars will stay with that, will maybe some minor updates on that version, but it's not, they're not going to jump to 5.6 yet. At least that's my understanding.
Thank you. So about Tesla says, to summarize, hardware 4 cars are getting the end-to-end highway, but hardware 3 cars are not getting that yet. Meta, when do you think hardware 3 cars are going to get end-to-end, including highway?
My guess is that there are some kernel adaptations that they need to implement. So they most likely didn't say if there's 100 adaptations, let's implement all 100 right away. They're just slowly making their way through. And an analogy to think about what is a kernel adaptation, if you want me to share that, I can share that now. Otherwise, we can assume people know it. Okay, I'll take your thumbs up as a yes.
Hold on 1 second. Just 1 second. No, 1 second. Are you guys getting an interruption from Meta's talk? No, you're not. Somebody just tell me. Do you get an interruption from my talk?
No.
Nope.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Do you hear me? I did. Okay, Meta, please continue.
Yeah, so the analogy for a kernel adaptation, there are many more exciting things in this announcement. I just want to preface this, but so people understand why the difference between AI3 and AI4, which keeps coming up. The analogy for a kernel adaptation is think of hardware 3 as a QWERTY keyboard and hardware 4 as a brand new keyboard where they replace the letter Q with a button that when you press it, it types QU. You can still type everything the same on both keyboards because you can press QU and then backspace if you need to write something like Tesla Q. But generally speaking, in most English, the letter Q is followed by the letter U. There are similar diagrams that exist, like ER, RE, very common. You could probably replace the keyboard by putting some additional keys on the keyboard, or you could swap out the letter E or the letter R with those kinds of things. Combined with backspace, you could still express almost everything you need to express. But the number of keystrokes on AI4 in this new keyboard will be less than on hardware 3. If you just blindly press the same keys, ignoring what the letters do, you're going to get really wild results, and your English will be horrible and your essays won't look good. So every single time they add a new keystroke optimization, they need to write an adaptation that says, while you can press QU on hardware 4, you need to type Q and then U on hardware 3. This obviously has reaction time consequences, various other things that occur. So it's far more complicated than making it sound. But all those kernel adaptations don't come for free. Those are optimizations people need to spend time doing. As they make those changes, we will see the benefits come down. What they're saying is, when they hedge their bets, is what if there's an unknown known? We come up with some kind of optimization that can't be adapted, then we'll deal with that at that time.
Makes sense. I think people generally underestimate how much time it takes to adapt hardware 4 models to hardware 3 cars. And I think people just, maybe Tesla should continue these incentives of free FSD transfers for people to buy AI4 cars. There's a benefit to Tesla as well, and there's a benefit to the customer of doing that switch as well. You just driving a much better car overall in ways that you don't even know before you upgrade. So yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, it sounds like a lot of hardware 3 owners are. Go ahead, Meta.
Oh, please continue what you're saying. Mine's off topic.
Yeah. A lot of hardware 3 owners are worried about this tweet. They're kind of considering, as Tesla is moving on to AI4 cars, training AI4 as they should, as we discussed here for months and months. And now is the time. So now is the time to upgrade. And you can even buy AI4 car used with a heavy discount. So, Meta?
Yeah, even still, like I would say, keep in mind these cars have a 25-year lifespan. I'm not saying people shouldn't upgrade. If you want the latest and greatest, and as most Tesla fans, if you're on X observing these things, you want it. Like, bluntly, if you're following enough to know when FSD releases come out, just upgrade your car. You probably will be happy with it. However, for everyone else, it is still important to remember those cars will, gas cars last 20 to 25 years. EVs will probably last longer than that. So the software expense of paying an engineer to do the adaptation to get another million cars before they get to, like, the production scale where the million cars will be insignificant, probably worth it. They'll probably do it, but they probably won't do it until it's fully solved for AI4, right? Like, it does make sense to run fast. And before, they were doing AI3 first, and it's because it was the larger portion of the fleet, but it's quickly going to be proportional and less.
Okay. I think you had a coffee bet about from a year ago, 2 years ago, with Machine. Is he here, by the way? He's not. Scared. He's scared when Meta is on the board. You had a coffee bet with Machine that says something like, the time between hardware 4 vehicles are able to be added to robotaxi network to hardware 3 vehicles able to be added to robotaxi network will be less than 1 year. Do you still agree with that time frame?
Yes, and to be clear, this is a statement of hardware 4 will get there first. As it takes longer and longer for them to solve this problem, Machine becomes more and more likely to be correct because the proportion of the population will shift. But my argument would be, once it's safe enough for AI4 to be on the road, at that moment, they can get AI3 working, and it makes sense to have a parallel track of spending some engineers doing the adaptation and some engineers continuing to do the improvement, because there is such a thing as too many cooks in a kitchen, right? You can't throw more people at a problem and suddenly have the problem get solved faster. There's a limit to how many people you can throw at the problem. So when you have extra people left over, you might as well throw them into the adaptation problem.
Okay, good. Great. Interesting topic. We're going to continue with this conversation. We have a very strong board today, and we're going to run out of time for sure. And therefore, Steve just super chatted $10 on YouTube. which means the space will go on for 10 more minutes than usual. So every dollar of super chat extends the period of the space by more than $1. And I don't have any commitments after the space today, so we can go on for several hours on this topic, as long as the conversation is interesting, of course. Meta?
Yeah, can I say the part of the release notes or the upcoming changes that excites me the most?
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. So thank you, Steve. And also thank you to the people who are liking the YouTube video and letting me know in YouTube live chat and also in X replies which number of like they are. This allows me to see who are the biggest fans of Tesla Live. And let me know in the form of code check number, whatever the like number is when you liked it. Mario, I think, is a question for Meta. Mario?
Hey, Yaman. I don't have a question for Meta, but I wanted to say I just proposed a coffee bet of when Tesla will exceed Waymo in weekly autonomous taxi rides. I don't know if that's a good topic now or not.
Is this for no? It's not a good topic right now. But is this for Meta or me?
I just proposed one on Twitter. I propose it to anybody in the space that wants to take the coffee bet. So Waymo is currently at reportedly
No. Hold on. Thank you. All right. So if you want to take that coffee bet on with Mario, head over to his profile and reply to his tweet. Okay, we can do that later on, but I really want to dig down into this tweet right now. We don't want to get distracted. We want to be focused. We have great technical speakers on the board, Meta, about Tesla, and we're going to continue with that topic about Tesla.
I have a question to Meta while we have him on the board. Can you explain how do you understand that item where it says much improved reward predictions for collision avoidance following traffic controls, navigation, etc.? I think I understand it, but maybe you can explain it in more detail if you could.
Yeah, I want to go through item by item through that list. So whatever list that Ashok put it, let's go through. But Mehdi, why don't you answer his question first?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a pretty technical answer. Maybe we can go through it if you want to do it line by line. But I don't think it's immediately what people think. I think what they're saying is internally they have to do a prediction, right? So when you do a release, a model release, you say we predict this is going to lead to 5% improvement in stopping before yellow light turns red. And you ship that out, and then you observe in the actual production traffic what actually happened, and maybe only 3% of the time it happened, or maybe 7% of the time happened. The further it is away from your actual prediction, that means your understanding of the world is incorrect, and so you want to improve that reward prediction so that you can do more of this offline without having to actually ship a release.
Okay, good. We're going to go through this Tesla AI tweet line by line and have it on YouTube. You can head over to YouTube to see it on your screens as we go through it. Okay. So we talked about what we completed section. End-to-end highway has shipped to 50,000 customers with 12.5.6.1. About Tesla mentioned that Tesla Phi shows a slightly higher percentage on what Ashok said. So that makes sense. More early adopters have Tesla Phi on their cars. We skipped the second and third points because we talked about that earlier. What's coming next? Full rollout of end-to-end highway driving to all AI4 users. We talked about that and AI3 implications in the last few minutes. You can head over to YouTube, rewind, listen to that part even during the live stream. Improved 12.5x models for AI3 city driving. We talked about that. Actual smarts are released to Europe, China, other regions of the world. About as I mentioned, note that they are not given a time frame on that. I think that's more of a next year story than anything else, and that's going to be limited by regulation approvals. Ellie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, really quick. I just want to mention that it's really excited me to see that now they basically break it down to segments to what's come next instead of just giving us some numbers and improvements and stuff. It's really important and nice to see it. Yeah.
Thank you. We just hit 100 likes on YouTube. Congratulations, everybody. Now, V13. This is a very technical conversation. I ask people to focus on understanding the technical aspects of this tweet. Okay, we want to understand the terms, what they mean, the implications, etc. Meta?
Before we get into the technical part, I'm going to encourage people to go hit some likes. Yaman's going to say how many likes you need to hit for this proposal. I made a prediction a few days ago. I've been saying this for a while on X, but even in this space, as to what I thought V13 would be defined by. Machine was on the board. He didn't agree. And I don't know if Omar agreed or disagreed. I think he may have disagreed too. But let's focus on machine. Yaman will, for a week or two, point out that machine is wrong if you get to at least insert number likes. And Yaman will tell us what that number is.
That's funny.
And it has to be within a certain
That
amount of time
is
from now.
funny. You know, audio ads are valuable, especially if they're read by host. We're talking like $20, $30 and a read. Okay. And the subscription price right now on X, how often I read these audio ads, is actually like 10x cheaper price than what they should be. And so for me to read that has to be at least a subscription price. And for that, we need like 10,000 likes. So how about we do 1,000 likes? If we get to 1,000 likes, I'll read, provided that it is factual and we can work offline. I'll read a sentence about machine being wrong if we get to 1,000 likes. How about that, Meta? Deal?
Agreed. Yeah, you don't even have to read a factual statement. You will just make fun of machine is the only requirement.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, I do that for free every day. All right, now V13. Can we, for God's sake, can we start already? I want to learn about this 36 hertz full resolution AI for video inputs. So Ashok put this pretty high up on the list. V13 is a package of following major technology upgrades. 36 hertz full resolution AI for video inputs. So I have an understanding of what this means, but what I really want to understand is how much of an improvement is this going to lead to in user experience and why?
So the hertz is referring to the frame rate, frames per second. I believe they were already at 32 to 36 for AI3. So I think the important piece of this is the full resolution AI4 image processing. The reason why this is important is we're going from 1.2 megapixels times 8 to, I think, about 4.8 or 5 megapixels times 8. It's a substantial increase in the width of the input, or height of the input in our parlance, the size of the input going in, without reducing the frequency. So the frequency staying the same means the reaction time, the thought process, everything is staying the same. So you can kind of see this as a 4 to 5x increase in the context coming in.
Okay, now I understand the technical part of it. 4 to 5 increase in the context coming in per second, let's say, per time unit, right?
Correct.
Because later on they also talk about the context length scaling. And can you give me like an example of an edge case where that would be helpful? Because it's not like Tesla isn't able to identify cars in distances where we don't even need to be identifying. Like right now, when I look at the screen, very accurate prediction of where the cars stand, even in parking lots on the other side of the highway, or or the road. Which these are cars I don't need to know when I'm driving. But is this more about maybe like identifying smaller objects?
Yeah, so this is the equivalent of improving the eyesight. So it's the megapixels means it has the ability to see more detail that is smaller. But also, this is kind of hard to understand sometimes, but the input being larger also gives the brain more flexibility to do reasoning. So it's not purely just eyesight improvement. It's also, think of it like the visual cortex itself has gotten bigger. So it can make more inference about lines, speed, where things are going, etc. And because the Tesla is an end-to-end network, it's not just the visual cortex. The entire brain has gotten bigger in a sense.
Okay, so you're saying that this technology upgrade to 36 hertz full resolution AI for video inputs will have benefits both on the training side and the inference side?
Inference specifically.
Just inference. What
Correct.
about during training?
I mean, I guess you could say both. It's hard to get an improvement in inference without getting an improvement during training. I think but what I mean to say is we will see changes in how the car reacts to small objects. We will also ideally start to see changes in like how much memory it feels like the vehicle has, like short-term memory, because you can think of it like the size of the brain you need with smaller eyes versus the size of the brain you need with larger eyes grows. So it's not just that you have better vision, you also have the mental capacity to reason about that better vision.
Okay, Dallas.
Yeah, so are you referring to the RAM there when you say like a larger memory?
Hold on,
Because
I can't hear
AI4.
Dallas. 1 second. Dallas.
Can you hear me now?
Just
Okay. So my question was like, are you referring to the amount of RAM that AI4 has versus hardware 3?
This is making use of that RAM, yes.
okay.
Maybe we can think of it like, if you play the game Match, so you see a bunch of cards, people flip cards over, then they flip them back, and you kind of have to remember where the cards are. That's kind of spatial reasoning. That's also improving in addition to the vision, because when you increase the frame rate, the input size, after the first few layers, those neurons that were allocated to the input start becoming deeper reasoning. So you actually have more neurons for deeper reasoning as well in the later stages.
Okay. So when you say Dallas, sorry, I have to do this one-on-one, and I know you weren't here when Meta was here, but we have to go. Okay. When you say bigger eyes, Meta, is that referring to the full resolution part of the sentence or 36 hertz part of the sentence?
The full resolution while keeping the 36 part, I think they're just saying while keeping the frame rate as good as it was before. So the real part is that the resolution has increased.
Okay, and that's the megapixels.
Right, because they could have theoretically increased the resolution while reducing the frequency. I think they're very proud that they kept the frequency the same.
Okay, and I got you. That makes sense. But doesn't this mean machine was right? Remember those conversations we used to have about megapixels for the cameras that the car can't see farther out and all that?
Yes, so for high-speed cross traffic, in theory, AI4 will get there before AI3. However, like we've talked about in the past, this doesn't mean you can't route around those issues. It doesn't mean that hardware 3 won't be useful in many cities that don't have those issues. So it doesn't mean that hardware goes in the dustbin.
Yeah. How confident are you, Meta, out of 100% confidence? How confident are you that hardware 3 vehicles will be able to be added to robotaxi network?
I'm
And same
100%.
question for 100%. Okay. Wow.
I'm 100% confident they'll be able to be added somewhere, not everywhere, but somewhere.
And definition of somewhere is like a city, state, or a country?
Cities?
Okay, so in some cities they will be added. Wow. Why is that? Because the regulatory hurdle is going to differ from city by city?
No, like there will be certain areas where hardware
I mean,
4 is.
there is no city in the world where there's no high speed cross traffic, for example.
So when we're talking about high-speed cross traffic here, we're talking like you're going from a 90-degree turn on something that's coming at like 60 to 80 miles per hour. In a city, you're not doing that kind of high speed.
I mean, let's say, for example, like there's no city in the world where there's no like Chuck's left turn situation.
Agreed, but I don't think that is a hardware 3 limitation. I think that is a that is a different problem. We're talking about really high speed cross traffic.
So when you say hardware 3 will be added to the robotaxi network in some cities but not others, you're referring to the difficulty of edge cases or something, or regulatory hurdles or something else?
The difficulty of edge cases, specifically making it so that hardware 3 is not as safe as hardware 4 in the same situations. So you just relegate it to other places. You know the route that you're going on, you know if there's going to be cross traffic or not, and so you can send a hardware 3 car or a hardware 4 car.
Gotcha. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. 100%. That's very high confidence. I mean, it just doesn't get any higher than that.
All right, we'll go with 99. I could be
Okay.
wrong for sure.
And what about AI4? 99 or 100?
Again, we'll go with 99.
So you're confident, basically you're saying your confidence level for AI4 and AI3 is the same. It's just a matter of timing.
And how far and where they can operate.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying for sure hardware 3 can't do everything hardware 4 can do. I'm just saying it's possible that safety numbers will change.
Right. Okay. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Before we move on to the next slide, Dallas, what was the question?
I can't hear Dallas.
Nobody can hear Dallas. I think Dallas, after I said one-on-one, he kind of checked out. He said, I'm going to cry myself to sleep. I'm going to take my soccer ball and go home. Dallas, are you there? Going once, going twice. He's in the bathroom. Okay. Native AI for inputs and neural network architectures. I mean, this is just basically saying they have neural network models that are going to be specific to AI4, given its specs are a little different than AI3. Interesting. Yikes. That's never going to go to hardware 3 cars. Dude, I don't think hardware 3 cars are going to be added to the network. Honestly, I'm kind of starting to change my opinion on that. Yeah. It's just not going to make sense in 5 years to focus on backward compatibility of cars from 7-8 years ago. It's not going to make any sense. Further, like I don't think those vehicles are going to make much money on the network, if at all. So even on the consumer side, the demand for adding the cars to the network might be super low. Meta?
Yeah, I don't think you care that much about the accident safety rating and the driver rating of your Uber drivers. You get some safer drivers, you get some less safe drivers. As long as the overall network is safe, I think that's all that people generally care about. And the second piece
Yeah,
is,
but here's I understand and keep the second piece in mind, but I don't think that's apples to apples comparison because nobody knows really the safety record of the Uber driver that's coming, but there's going to be many studies about the safety record of hardware 4 cars versus hardware 3 cars.
correct, but you could say hardware 3 for the trips that they're assigned to versus all trips. But the second piece to keep in mind is they're not going to stop at AI4. They're not going to stop at AI5. There will be a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. By the time they get to 20 million cars, by the time they get to replacing all cars everywhere in the planet, we will be many hardware versions from now. Tesla needs to eventually develop a muscle to have a heterogeneous network, not a homogeneous network. So they're going to have to deploy and support legacy vehicles at some point anyway.
Okay. Anything on this line, native AI for inputs and neural network architectures?
Yeah, the second piece is important. So that the inputs I think we all get, but the neural network architectures basically suggest to me that they're going to lean more and more heavily into the activation functions, the architectural advantages, and sizing the neural nets for AI4, which is a suggestion that they're developing the ability to do 2 tracks and not just 1 track. So remember a while back when Elon tweeted, AI4 will always lag behind AI3, and then Ashok came out and said, no, we can go ahead and just ship it now through emulation. that distinction, I think what Elon is referring to is if you were to do it this way, it would lag. So I think this is where we're going to start to see that lag.
Okay, understood. All right. Now the next 4, we should probably talk together in conjunction with each other. 3x model size scaling, 3x model context length scaling, which we discussed a couple of episodes ago. 4.2 times data scaling, 5 times training compute scaling enabled by Cortex. I don't think it's a coincidence that these numbers for each of them are pretty close to each other. I think you have to scale these things together, right?
No, they just happen to be. That's not true.
Okay, tell me more.
So the first thing I would say is that 4.2 data scaling, I am a little dubious that they're double counting something here, which is the input resolution increase plus the audio that they referred to later. I think that might be making up the 4.2 data increase. It's still notable, but I suspect that's what they're referring to is this 4.2 data increase is reflected in some of the other bullets.
Okay.
And then
But why? Okay, yeah.
And then on the 3x model size scaling and 3x context length scaling, I can talk about why those are 2 independent things.
No, I think I understand why those are independent. Okay, but so you're increasing model size by 3 times, and you're increasing the 3x model context length scaling. But the model context length is not like that's what we were talking about earlier, like a couple of episodes ago, 10 seconds versus 30 seconds, right?
Correct. So this
Okay.
is 15 seconds. They settled on 15 versus 30. Obviously, it's different, but I'm just happy that that is, I think, the defining factor for V13.
Okay. But that context length is not staying constant, right? So is this on average, or is this kind of
No,
max
it's
capacity?
constant. It's constant.
But there are situations where you don't need to remember 15 seconds, and there are situations where you need to remember even longer.
Yeah, so the way it works, unfortunately, is you have to have a fixed context length. That when you, based on the way we do training today, you just have to pick that size. And the consequence of the size you pick is during training, you can only punish and reward based on that window. And so during inference, you can only make predictions based on that window.
That's super inefficient. So you're telling me that to decide whether to accelerate from 59 to 60 miles an hour, or to drop to 59 or drop to 58, I have to remember exactly what happened for the last 15 seconds?
Well, yes.
Wow.
This is how it works.
That's the problem. That's the fucking problem right there.
Well, if you want to reinvent,
that's why we need this entire huge, like, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of AI compute. If you can just change that, we have FSD tomorrow.
Yeah, if you could just change that, many people in the world would love to hear your idea. But
Okay.
many brilliant minds have tried to solve this, and there's no clear solution right now.
That is really weird. Why am I forced like that? That's ridiculous. That is so insane.
It's because the person who solved the problem to get to this stage did such a hard problem solution that they actually won a Nobel Prize now recently, right? This is what Jeffrey Hinton solved.
Take his Nobel Prize away. Take it back.
The next person who can figure out a dynamic context window probably will also win a Nobel Prize.
Okay, so it's called dynamic context window. And what's the opposite? Stable? What is it? Constant or what?
It's just called a context window.
Context window, because there's no dynamic. Interesting. Okay, so
I guess you could call it static, but it's considered redundant.
Okay. So you're telling me that we don't have dynamic context window, and that's because what you use to do inference has to match what you'd use to train? Is that why?
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Why is that? Why do they have to match? Like, I
Okay.
understand the training part of it, maybe, maybe you want some consistency there, etc. But during inference, why the hell do I have to remember 15 seconds?
How technical do you want
Is
to get?
is that because, I mean, I want to get it real technical, but is that because I don't know, like, or I mean, I do. Yeah, okay. Let me ask it this way. Very simple question, yes or no question. Is that because AI is not benefiting from thousands of years of evolution like
Yes.
humans are? Okay. Yeah,
So
I get it now.
you have to remember, when people look at how AI is developing today, oftentimes they'll compare it to like a baby. What they forget is the baby starts with 500 million years of evolution. So they don't start from zero. We start from literally zero when we start training these models at the foundational level. So you should compare it to like an amoeba, not to a baby.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Hmm. Do you think this is something that's ever going to change, or do you think, like, what needs to change for that to change? Because that would be a huge unlock.
Yeah, if I had that solution, Yaman, I would not be talking about it here. I'd probably be
Okay,
publishing
but
it.
there might be theories around it, right? So there are
Yes,
people,
yes.
you said a lot of smart people have been trying to create dynamic context windows. What are some of the, like, top 2, 3 theories here that have a shot?
Yeah, so there's a few that have shown whether they work or don't work, but many of them focus on layer length, not the context window, because it's not seen to be a problem. I know you're seeing it as a big problem, but it's just input size. The thing that we're trying to optimize is overall parameter use, overall parameter count. So you can reduce parameter count by reducing the number of layers. You can reduce parameter count by reducing the token window. You can do downsampling, as I suggested earlier. The issue, if I'm
I know,
honest,
no, I understand, but all of those, like, I get that's the greater goal, but the other ones kind of make sense why we have that, like a higher resolution, higher parameter counts. Like, we may need those. I get that, but there's so many situations where I don't have to remember 15, 30 seconds, and the fact that I have to
correct.
train and infer based on that is just a huge waste. Like, that sounds like a low hanging fruit. So
It is
what
the
are some of
purpose.
these?
Yeah, so
What are these leading theories?
yeah, so my theory on why it's not higher priority is because it is only an issue in a real-time safety critical situation, and outside of Tesla FSD, I can't really think of anyone else really tasked with solving this problem. Maybe Waymo. So there's not a high
Yeah.
amount of academic focus on it because it is not the place where they have the ability to work on it. It's not like Tesla's opening up their data to academia and saying, here, come work on this problem. So the parameter count reduction, there's way more low-hanging fruit in the other spaces I described. So that's where people focus. There
Hmm.
are theories on how to do this. I don't want to ascribe which ones will work or won't work because right now my assumption is it's kind of like Elon with the batteries. Many theories have come. None of them have worked. And so if you remember a while back, Figure said the CEO made a claim which turned out to be completely false. And that's what I was saying was a very big deal if it was true. They made a claim that the robot watched someone do something and then learned how to do it. That's, again, another example of one of those, like, reducing how many samples you need to train. That's another similar problem that, like, I don't think people have a great solution on so far. Transformers did bring us much, much closer to that. There are some prevailing theories in this space. I'm not really comfortable talking about that, if that's okay. I would just rather not, just
Yeah,
because
that's
I'm
fine.
in this world, you know.
Yeah, I got you. I understand. That's totally fine. Interesting. Okay, so you're saying that because in other applications of AI, the context window is not as big of a deal as it is in Tesla's safety critical interventions. There is not much attention paid to this topic in the academic world, as Tesla would need. Okay.
To refine it a little bit, it's not that the context window
Yeah.
is not a big deal, it's that the reaction time doesn't need to be as sensitive.
Oh, I see. I see.
It's the 36 hertz.
Right. Right. Okay. Um, very interesting. Very interesting. This is an interesting topic. Wow. Um, Hey, you're gonna appreciate this. So I was explaining all of this stuff to somebody who just doesn't follow, um, these topics as close as we do. They are not aware of the technical terms and everything, but um, is all you need is obviously a very important paper that we discussed many times. So it comes up even in conversations with an average friend of mine who just doesn't follow Tesla. And I mentioned it, and she was citing it back, and she said, "What was the name of that paper? Attention is all that grows." So, no, no, it's not that. But
The corollary is also very important. Forgetting is all you need. What not to pay attention
interesting.
to is equally as important as what to pay attention to.
Yeah. So why doesn't Tesla fund some academic researchers to focus on this thing?
I wouldn't make the assumption that there isn't a lot of concerted effort in this space. There is. As you know, I think I talked about this 2 years ago. I declared when we were talking about this, I work in the compression space, AI making models smaller. And 2 years ago, I'm sure you could, back then it was like, why are people even focused on this? Now, in retrospect, it's very obvious. When I have been harping on context windows, you can kind of get a hint as to where I might be working on at this time in my career.
Okay. True or false? Creating dynamic or allowing dynamic context windows would save Tesla tens of billions of dollars in capex.
True, but I'm not going to agree that that's the lowest hanging fruit.
So you're saying Tesla can save tens of billions of dollars in capex with solving another problem rather than focusing on dynamic context windows?
Correct.
Okay, what is that?
Things like quiet thought, chain of thought, early prediction, things like that.
Can you just repeat the what you said? I'm going to take this down and do some research.
Sure. And there was a recorded space on one of these papers I did with Wiggle and Adrian called Quiet Thought. There's also Chain of Thought. That's a muddy.
Is this basically just ChatGPT 01?
No. No. People thought that was Q star. They're two different things. Just because it has the Q in there doesn't mean it's the same thing. Those are two different things. It's the chain of thought is 01. Yes. Chain of thought has a term. Unfortunately, you're going to find a lot of papers using it. It's become a buzzword. Look at papers before 01 came out, and then you'll be a little bit better off without a bunch of things just calling themselves chain of thought that are not what chain of thought was originally termed. Tree of thought, anything of thought that you can find, similar space, graph of thought. Colloquially, all of it's just called chain of thought. And then early prediction, early reward. These are just broad terms for lots of different things in the space.
Okay, I'm going to do some research on these terms and we can talk about them later on. But are you saying these are lower hanging fruits because the academic research on these things are further along or some other?
Yes, and also because when you're trying to save reaction time, proportional parameters you can save on the input from the context length, like let's say you brought the context length down by half, you're only saving at most 50% of your parameters. However, if you can get the layer count down by 90%, you have a much like the upside potential on reducing your layer count is much higher. At some point, you have to still have some memory, right? Like we've talked about, there are times when you definitely need to be able to reason at certain points. So because you have to do it sometimes, it's like considered acceptable to just say, okay, we won't go optimizing that right now. Let's optimize the other thing that we know we don't always have to do.
Well, dynamic context will allow that, when you need it, you can use it.
Right. But in the worst case scenario, your reaction time is still going to be the same, right? So at the end of the day, like if we look at 36 hertz, right, that's about 27 milliseconds reaction time. An F1 driver is about 110. So you got about 5x space. You're about 5 times faster than an F1 driver and about 10 times faster than a regular human. So that's your reaction time advantage right now. If you double your context window and you do nothing else, theoretically, you could be 2.5 times worse than a race car driver and 5 times worse than a regular human. But if that solves FSD, who cares? Do it.
Okay. Let's take some questions, and then we're going to continue down with the list that is on your screens on YouTube. And take a moment if you're enjoying this conversation. Go ahead.
I need to step away for 5 minutes. I'll be back.
Okay, sounds good. Take a moment to head over to YouTube and like the video. It really helps us out. It pushes the video out to new viewers, introduces the channel, gets subscribers, ad revenue increases. It's a really, really good return on time for the listeners. So if you can't, I understand if sometimes people can't contribute financially, but one thing you can do for free that really helps us out is to like the video. So please take a moment to head over to the top of your screens, click into our YouTube link, and hit that like button. In the meantime, I'm going to read our audio ads, and so you wouldn't be missing much here. This episode is hosted on a laptop provided by Paymore. Thank you, Paymore, for hooking me up with a MacBook Pro so that I have to put ice water on my MacBook Air to keep it cool. This way I can contribute more, I can pay more attention. I think it really helps us out in more way than one. At Paymore, you can buy the latest gadgets at great prices, sell or trade your used electronics for a cash or store credit, or recycle old or broken devices responsibly, helping reduce electronic waste. You can check them out online at paymore.com. And they also have more than 100 stores. They're opening more on their account. They, just like Supercharger account, they announce which stores they're opening. And Tesla Live is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. At Joa, you'll find innovative charging solutions, stylish interior upgrades, protective gear, and cutting-edge tech add-ons. Use promo code TSLA Live at checkout to receive a special discount on your next purchase. Thank you, Joa and Paymore, for supporting Tesla Live and making technology accessible and sustainable for everyone. Luce,
Hello, everybody. So,
hold on? Did you hit the like button?
Yeah, I did.
No. What number were you?
I closed it right now, but I just pressed it. It was like 135 or something like that.
Wrong. You didn't hit it, did you?
No, I did. I honestly did.
Okay, fine.
I always do.
What's the question?
So does model size scaling like the size linearly scales with storage and the model context length scales linearly with the RAM? Is that correct?
Does the model size scale linearly with the RAM? Is that?
No, model size scales linearly with the amount of storage you have, and context length with the amount of RAM, right? Because you need to keep it in memory.
Yeah, we can ask that question to Meta when he gets back, but it sounds about right to me. Alexander?
Yeah, if you have a bigger parameter count, obviously you need more memory.
Okay, Alexander, what was your earlier? You had your hand up. What was your question or comment?
No, my question was if what breakthroughs were needed to swap the context window, but you kind of asked that question.
Okay, cool. Alexander, what did you think of the conversation so far?
Yeah, I'm been in training mode, so I'm not really in inference mode right now. So I have to take some time to swap back to inference.
Yeah, I hear you. That's exactly how I was feeling about a year ago, and this is supervised learning, basically. We need to have these watch parties. I need to kind of start doing them. We got to do watch parties of reviews of papers, previous Tesla events, kind of get these terminology down to have these conversations on a continuing and a deeper levels.
So does it mean that we can predict precisely how big the model size will be and also the context length will be, basically just looking at RAM and storage? So like what was the models like does hardware 4 have 3 times the storage of hardware 3?
Omar, do you remember the memory size difference between hardware 3 and hardware?
I don't off the top of my head. That is something Green might know.
Yeah. So Luce is asking if the memory size differential between hardwares is an indication of the model size and the context size. What do you think?
It's a factor. It's one factor. There are several. The FSD team has talked about certain functions being hardware accelerated in silicon and AI4 that aren't in AI3. They've tried to kind of like paper over that by writing some GPU kernels, but when there's just something that's not in silicon there, you can't really go and add it later. So I think the AI4 design has benefited from them knowing what kind of things they need to do and accelerating that in the circuitry rather than at the software level. And so it's a combination of memory, it's a combination of the performance of the CPU and GPU and NPU, of course, but it's also a function of the chip design itself and certain functions that they know that are commonly used, certain model architectures they want to use that they've added extra functionality in AI4 to do.
Yeah. Yeah, Lucia, to answer your question in short, I think there are way too many variables to say that it's a one-to-one relationship. Okay. All right, Omar. In the
FSD
first hour,
13, baby, let's go.
in the first hour, we discussed the first few bullet points of the Tesla AI team's updated tweet, updated schedule, and you have it on your screens if you're watching this on YouTube. And Mehdi and I were discussing the 36 hertz full resolution AI video inputs, the 3x model size scaling, 3x model context length scaling, and 4.2 times data scaling, and 5 times training compute scaling. What each one of those means exactly.
I was reading this and I was like, these guys have to be listening to our space, right? Like we were just talking about the context length the other day, and now they're telling us, oh, yeah, we are actually increasing the context length. It's like, oh, thanks. This is really useful, detailed information on V13. Sounds like it's going to be the biggest update yet, and we're going to finally see what AI4 is capable of. People don't realize they've been training AI3 models this entire time. They've been downsampling the images. We haven't seen what those cameras are capable of, what the hardware is capable of. They talked about new model architectures as well as new inputs that are AI4 native. So, yeah, the power of AI4 has just been untouched, and now we're going to use it.
Okay, great. Now, let me ask you this. So we focused a lot on the full resolution part of the 36.8 full resolution AI4 video inputs. Aside from being able to identify even smaller objects or even farther objects, what benefit does that bring to the user experience?
Well, it may actually make things worse in some ways, right? Because it's going to take longer to train. Inference is going to take longer, but the computer also has more processing power. So it should be able to do that. I mean, just think about like watching something in HD versus 4K or watching something in standard definition versus HD. That's kind of what it's like. So you can just see things more clearly. The cameras are just better, right? And that input is what you're working off of, right? It's driving based on what it can see. So actually using those 4 times higher resolution AI4 cameras, it's going to have a much better input to work with, not only seeing things more clearly, being able to work out smaller objects, maybe have more accurate speed detection, but also just things like low light performance. All the upgrades they've made to the cameras in addition to the higher resolution. So to put things simply, it can see the world more clearly by now using the AI4 cameras. And there's no sort of loss from having to downsample it and things not matching exactly. It's now in its own skin. AI4 can just be AI4. It doesn't have to pretend that it's an AI3 car, which is what it's been doing so far.
Okay, but to push back a little bit, being able to see the surrounding of the car wasn't a limiting factor, correct?
I mean, it can be helpful to see things in more detail. You could potentially make out things from further away, react sooner. There are benefits. I mean, think about it. Would you rather look at a small image or an image that's 4 times higher resolution? Like, you can tell right away when you see a higher resolution image, you go, okay, I can make out all the details in this image more precisely. If you're doing things like reading hand signals, yeah, being able to have a 4 times higher resolution for something small like a hand signal probably does make a big difference. So there's a reason they put the higher resolution cameras on the car, in part just to keep up with the times. And now they're actually going to be able to use that capability in the model. So the model can see the world more clearly, and that is going to have good downstream effects, right? If you can't see, then the model can be the most intelligent model in the world, but it's not going to know what to do. If you can make things out more clearly, you can then make better decisions.
Okay, Alexander?
It will now be able to determine machines' gender.
Oh my God. All right, there's more machines mom jokes in YouTube live chat. Can't wait for FSD V13 AI for M3P to drive me to pick up my machines mom. Nick L says. Okay, so here are the specs between hardware 3 and hardware 4 by Chuck Cook. Okay, he says let's further put these 3 lines into context with an analogy to LLMs that many are beginning to understand. Hardware 4 has 256 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM, as compared to hardware 3's 64 and 8 gigabytes of RAM. So 4 times more storage, 2 times more memory. The publicly available Llama 3.1 model has a 405 billion parameter model that requires 229 gigabytes of space. And they also trained on a 70 billion parameter version of this model that requires 40 gigabytes of space. These models do not perform the same, but do many of the same tasks. Over time, many AI researchers feel we will be able to get the same or better performance out of smaller models. But right now, we are brute force training larger. Okay. So just what to remember here is that hardware 4 has 4 times more storage, 2 times more RAM. Okay. Dallas, do you have a question? Okay. Dallas, are you busy right now?
Yeah, sorry, I just can't talk at the moment. I'll go down to listen.
Thank you. Yeah, people shouldn't be hanging out on the speaker board. If you can't speak, if you can't contribute to this the topic, you should be in listening mode. Edward?
Yeah, I'm just about to go on the robotaxi network myself right now, but I wanted to ask a question about the cameras. Is Tesla have a dedicated team to actually work on these sophisticated, futuristic, high definition cameras of the future, or are they just working with other companies?
Omar?
I mean, I don't. There's no sophisticated high definition camera. It's just that hardware 3 was trained on, before they were training on 1.2 megapixel images. Now they're training on 5 megapixel images. So
Okay.
it's just a higher resolution.
Yeah, I mean, billions of phones have basically these cameras already. So this is not a pretty much a solved problem. Tesla doesn't have to internally invent a new camera.
It's just a camera.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
the image is bigger that comes out of it.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Much improved reward predictions for collision avoidance following traffic controls, navigation, etc. Any comment on that, Omar?
Yeah, the reward is in the training process how it kind of scores itself or tells the model in the training process when it did something good or did something bad. If you can improve the way you estimate that reward and estimate the loss, then you can make the model perform better on these things. So it's going to be better at collision mitigation, better at traffic lights, stop signs, that type of thing. So that's positive.
Okay. Much improved is the relative term, though, right? So, I mean, how do you improve reward prediction for collision avoidance? Like, you don't want to collide either way, right? So, can you kind of give maybe examples of what that exactly means?
Well, say you're, you know, taking a test, right? And the test is really grading you on, this, like you're taking an SAT test, it's got reading, writing, and math, right? And each of them are equal. Then you're going to study reading, writing, and math equally. But then they say, you know what, math is actually really important. We're going to have two sections on math. So now you need to study more math. So the test impacts how you learn because you're trying to get a high score on the test. So if they improve their formula to give you a grade on collision avoidance, on handling traffic lights, that kind of thing, then you may actually learn to become a better student in those areas because their grading system's better, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thank you. Any questions on that item from the speaker board? Much improved reward predictions for collision avoidance following traffic controls and navigation, etc. Okay, no questions. Efficient representation of maps and navigation inputs. What does that mean?
I'm not 100% sure, but it probably means that they're passing in the maps and navigation input as text or something like that and allowing the model to process it, or they have some new format for bringing the data in. This should help with some of the routing and navigation issues people have reported.
Okay. So when V13 rolls out, we should be seeing less running of red lights. We should
Yes.
be seeing a surge or material increase in miles per critical intervention. And critical, definition of critical is, are you going to crash? That's really the only, like 100% or 99% reliability prediction of, would the car have crashed if the person did not intervene? Okay, great. I mean, I actually, like, when I'm trying FSD, when I'm riding on FSD, I don't see many navigation issues. I haven't seen one in a long time. So the lane selection is already superhuman, I think.
It's getting very good, and it's now also able to fix its mistakes very well. So I had it get into a left turn lane a few weeks ago when it needed to go straight, and it just waited and then it got out of the lane and it went straight. So it's not only making fewer mistakes, but when it makes a mistake like a human, it can fix it.
Yeah. All right, next item. Audio inputs for better handling of emergency vehicles. So is this multimodal training at this point?
I don't know if I'd call it multimodal training. I would assume they probably just have some siren detector running and, it kind of just feeds an input into the neural network. So it should improve handling of pulling over for emergency vehicles, which is great.
Okay. Panda, go ahead.
All right. So first time. Thanks, guys, for letting me on the board. So I'm going to get to the question, but I just want to get a lead up. So Omar, heard you on the other channel as well. Totally understood. Hardware 3 end of life. You know, the
Well, I
advice.
wouldn't call it end of life, but it's taking the back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, I get it.
we obviously have rules in this space, and one of the most critical rules is first-time speakers must ask a question in 10 words or fewer. The question should start with a question word, what, when, where, and every time I try to be more lenient on this. I'm reminded again that we have these rules for a reason. So you can ask your contextual question later in a different space, but if you want to be part of this space, you have to abide by the rules. So Kapanda, take your time to formalize your question in 10 words or fewer, starting with a question word.
Okay, guys, I'm back. So this is the question. When
Yeah,
we
so again, okay, guys, I'm back. This is the question, is you use up most of your 10 words. So you had twice the chance now. Come back next time. Thank you. Redesign controller for smoother, more accurate tracking. What does that mean?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think the controller is what takes the neural net outputs and translates that into actuation. So if it can track the vehicle state more precisely and more smoothly, then that should result in smoother control of the vehicle. But I'm kind of just guessing at this point what this means.
Okay. Integrated on-park reverse and park capabilities. I mean, I guess this got to be one of the most exciting features here.
Yeah, needing to reverse was a big category of issues for interventions. One of the last remaining things that you had to do. You know, someone's just too close to you, you can't get around them, you need to reverse. The software couldn't do it. So now it's going to be able to do that. It's going to be able to do 3-point turns. If you start it from within a parking spot where you parked face in, you'll be able to just turn on FSD without having to even pull out of the spot. And it'll just reverse, pull out of the spot, and go. Get out of the parking lot, take you to your destination. So that's going to be very exciting. That's going to make it, you know, really truly feature complete. And then, as they mentioned in the next point, you're going to be actually able to tell it what you want it to do when you get to the destination, whether it's pull over, park, pull into your driveway or garage, or you name it.
Thank you. Arthur Blake?
What's the cheapest hardware 4 from used inventory car you can find right now? I've been searching for one. I can find one about 30K. But I'm not sure if it's hardware 4 because May 2023 Model 3, I think they started in June. Just curious if.
Only the new redesigned Model 3s have AI4.
Oh, really? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be mostly your 2024 builds. You have probably
Honestly,
a better
the
chance of
new
buying a
ones,
cheaper Model Y.
the new ones are so cheap and they've got such good deals on them. I would just go for a new one if you could.
It's still over 40K though, even with incentives.
Yeah,
At least
Do you
that's how
qualify
I.
for the?
With
Do you qualify for the
7,500K.
tax credit?
Yeah, I couldn't find one lower than about 40K with when you add the FSD and everything on.
Don't add the FSD, subscribe, and get a new car instead with the latest hardware.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Support for destination options, including pulling over, parking in a spot, driveway, and garage. Man, they really setting the bar high for this V13 update here.
Yeah, they're just crossing items off the wish list. So right now, sometimes my thing will pull into my driveway, but sometimes it'll pull over. That's going to be really cool to just say, hey, when you get home, just pull into my garage. Actually, it was funny. You know, yesterday I was driving around Los Angeles for hours and my car just did everything perfectly. I started to lean back a little in the seat. I was enjoying it. And then we get home and I go, okay, let me pull into the garage. And I almost hit the wall in front of the garage. Luckily, I had like some construction materials on the floor that stopped the wheel uh eh, from from moving before I hit the wall. But I was like about to hit the wall of the garage, maybe like drive through into my house. And I'm like, man, the software drove me around flawlessly for hours. I had one job to pull into the garage and I almost crashed the car. So the fact that it can now pull into the garage for me and just sort of close that loop, I think is exciting to see in the release notes here.
Okay. So it says destination options. What does that mean exactly? You're going to be kind of selecting pull over or park in the spot or driveway when you reach your destination?
Yeah, so I think you'll be able to say like, okay, if I'm dropping my kid off at school, just pull over and, let them out. If I'm going to the office, then take me to the office, go park in the parking spot. If I'm going home, then pull into the driveway or pull into the garage. If I'm going to my friend's house, maybe pull into their driveway. And you'll essentially just be able to set options for what you want it to do after it gets there.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments about this list? Please request to speak. Let's see. Improved camera cleaning. What the hell does that mean? Was there camera cleaning
See?
now?
I'm telling you, they're listening to this space, right?
Oh, come on.
They've got to be.
What? No, what does that even mean? Improved camera cleaning. I didn't realize there was camera cleaning in the first place.
I mean, they've got to just be talking about the windshield wiper.
Oh, I see. So nothing about the repeated cameras?
I don't think so. As far as I'm aware, I mean, they do have like some heating elements in them. And I'm sure they have like some coatings and stuff, but they don't have any wipers or anything like that. In the Cybertruck, they actually have a washer for the front bumper camera. So they are kind of trialing some stuff there, but most of the cars, the side cameras, the rear camera, they don't have any type of cleaning or wipers.
So we have no idea what this improved camera cleaning means other than potentially the wiper for the front cameras.
I mean, it's got to be the windshield wiper. That's the only cleaning they have. So, like I mentioned, the windshield wiper is designed to clean the front camera as well as the windshield. So, they probably have smarter logic about when to use the water, how to clean it, make sure it's good for FSD, and then also just manage occlusions better, manage dirt better, and generally just be more resilient for unsupervised driving.
Alexander.
Yeah, what I kind of wish they did is putting a wiper fluid nozzle at the backup camera.
Okay. Let's focus on, so this is a very technical conversation. It's going to get even more technical now that Meta is back on the board. If you're not able to contribute to the conversation at a technical level, do not be on the speaker board. Remove yourself gently to the listener mode. Otherwise, I will do it harshly and you won't like it. You won't like me for months and months, and you're going to bitch about it on X, and then you'll be back because you're going to realize this is what's necessary for high quality conversation. Adam, what's your question?
I have a question about driving in the garage, FSD driving in the garage or covered space. Will it work?
Omar?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of parking space, garage space, it should be able to pull into there. Anything that it's seen people pulling into in their training set as a sort of garage or cover or whatever for their car, that's what it does.
I mean, honestly, when I look at this tweet, I'm like, I think the top ones are probably they have high confidence in, and they kind of just added things as they go along. And before they posted it, it's like, okay, we're gonna throw this in there too. Seems.
They said each of these items has been validated independently. We're just working on merging it together.
Okay. Let's take the question from Package. Go ahead, Package.
How will FSD handle school pickup and drop off lines?
Just like a human does. But I think that functionality is probably far away. Like to be able to send your Tesla to pick up your kid from a school where parents are waiting in line on the curb for half hour, and they're kind of like inching towards. Like I think that's a long way away. Meta, what do you think?
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to answer that question. I thought you were answering those questions.
Yeah.
I mean, it can do like a drive-through line. Like if you turn it on in a drive-through line, it'll kind of just follow and do what it's supposed to do. In terms of a school pickup where you're waiting a really long time, currently FSD will turn off if it stays stopped for 10 minutes and we'll just put the car in park. So, that's kind of a limitation today.
Yeah. Meta, do you think you're going to be able to send your Tesla to pick up your kid anytime soon?
I have learned that I'm too optimistic as an engineer to make these predictions. But yes, I think soon defined as within my lifetime, yes.
I mean, there's a school nearby me, and I'm like, I look at that parents waiting on the curb and blocking traffic and everything. Yeah, okay.
Soon is defined as in your lifetime.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna have AGI soon then.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just take the broadest things I've learned from machine. Just take the broadest thing and then you'll be right. Or pick the things where you can't be proven wrong in your lifetime.
He's
but the context
MIA today.
The context window certainly helps. He saw context window increase and he ran away.
Yeah, I would think he would want to come here and gloat about how Hardware 3 is getting left in the dust. But
that's what
he didn't show up.
What I said. Yeah.
Except that the second bullet literally says they're going to send updates to Model 3, so that's not exactly accurate.
Yeah, but that's 12.5.
They are, but I mean, we're starting to now see AI4 performance materially diverge with them training AI4 native models. So, we all knew this was coming. They've said for a long time, look, once Cortex is live, we're going to start training AI4 models, But it is, a material change. Before, if you had AI3, your car can run the same model, right? I mean, as recently as last month. Now they're doing a 3 times larger model with V13. I think they said it could be up to 8 times larger on AI4. The model's probably going to get bigger, and AI3 will probably have to go back to a distilled version of the larger model.
Meta?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you think the latency will be from holding safety constant, that when a model goes to AI4, how long before that's shipped that AI3 will catch up?
I don't think it's going to be their number one priority. I think their number one priority needs to be achieving unsupervised FSD. Whether it's AI5 or AI4, whatever, achieve unsupervised FSD. Demonstrate it's possible. Then you can focus on backporting, or hell, if backporting's too hard, just upgrade everyone, right? And if you've achieved unsupervised FSD at that point, you've certainly got the cash flow to do it. So I think that it's going to be possible to improve AI3 quite a bit further than where it is today, but it's not going to be their number one priority. So you could really be looking at, being a month behind AI4 functionality or more if you want to keep an AI3 car. And I mean, it's still going to drive better than any other brand on the road, but it won't be as good as AI4.
Okay, we have a question, a super chat from YouTube Live Chat Meta. So this is a $5 super chat, and earlier Steve sent $10. This means we're going to extend this episode 15 minutes total beyond the 2-hour limit, which is great. So one way you can support longer spaces is by sending super chats on YouTube Live Chat through the link at the top of your screens. Meta, the question is there any regulation against Tesla pushing ass in Europe right now? Not trying to be funny, honest question. Love the space. Omar for president. I guess maybe Omar should answer this question since you're the president, Omar.
Summon is already legal in those countries. So there's no regulatory issue other than whatever the process is for sending out an update to update the old horrible smart summon with the new actually smart summon.
Yeah. Did you guys see that $5,000? You can pay $5,000 for a Russian hacker, and FSD starts working in Russia.
If I lived in Russia, I would do it.
Yeah. Do you think Tesla will send out a bug fix that fixes?
Probably not.
No.
They're getting free data.
They're like, oh, great. Data from Russia, data from, Eastern Europe. I mean, let me let you in on a little secret. This isn't the only FSD Tesla that's been imported from the United States to another country. You see them in Ukraine. You see them in, what was it? Some other country that started with a C. They're around.
Meta.
I wanted to make a statement about the context window where we had left off, if you want to continue that conversation, but if not, we can pause.
Yes.
Okay. So earlier in a conversation, there was a chat thread with Machine, and we talked about this. And I demonstrated how very, very simply, even with a 2x context window increase, they could go from 5 seconds to 30 seconds by downsampling, right? That it's a 3x token window increase suggests that if they just sample every frame equally, they're going from 5 seconds to 15 seconds. However, if they decided to sample every other frame for the remaining for the 10 seconds beyond 5 seconds, then you're looking at 25 seconds, right? So like, and we've talked about this in some examples where maybe you need 20 to 30 seconds to see further back. Of course, they could downsample again, and so you can see how they can get longer and longer memory, and you have a less clear and precise memory for things that occurred further back, but you can continue to downsample. So this context window is actually very profound. I think lane selection issues, things where like you were giving the example of knowing when there's all this like stop and go traffic when you're dropping your kids off, a lot of these things can start to happen more. It's more probable because now they have the capability to train on it.
I mean, I haven't had a lane selection issue in a long time, like over a year. And Texas is actually huge when it comes to this kind of stuff. A lot of lanes, a lot of highways on top of each other, etc. In what other way this context length scaling is going to help? Like, what are the specific edge cases that people will see in their daily drives that will improve performance because of this 3x model context length scaling?
All the scenarios are going to come down to some kind of backup or some kind of lane selection that had they made a different decision 10, 15, 20 seconds ago, they wouldn't have landed themselves in a position that they don't want to be in. So every time FSD puts itself in a scenario where you're like, oh crap, now I got to do something urgent or jerky or not so smooth. But had I thought more deeply 15 seconds ago or 20 seconds or a minute ago, I wouldn't be in the situation. Those are the scenarios that get helped. And maybe it doesn't happen to you on your rides, but I do see a lot of people complaining about how it took the wrong lane rather than patiently waiting in its turn.
Okay. Omar, did you know that you can't dynamically adjust context window? I didn't know that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is sort of like embedded in the model architecture to some extent. But so you can kind of think about it like Dory from Finding Nemo, right? Dory is somehow able to swim through the ocean even with her short-term memory loss. But we've now expanded Dory's memory by 3x. So Dory can maybe get where she's going, make some better decisions. I can't necessarily think of what these things are off the top of my head, but I'm guessing I might start to see some examples once it actually ships.
Okay. Meta question for your model size scaling. Earlier, Lucha asked, does model size scale? Like, let's say if you triple the model size, do you necessarily need 3 times more RAM, more memory?
The technical answer is no.
Okay.
That's the technical answer?
That's a brief technical answer. Yes. No.
Would you elaborate a little?
Sure, there are many ways you can do it, but there's these scaling laws. There are many different scaling laws. One of the scaling laws to remember is you can trade off reaction time for memory reduction, like the amount of peak memory is what we should think about. A
Well,
lot of people are looking at how much RAM it is.
assume your reaction time is the same, because you
Then
can't trade
yes.
off reaction time. Exactly. Okay. So if your reaction time is the same, then yes, pretty much a one-to-one increase. Interesting. So here's the
Alternatively,
way.
you could reduce your eyesight. There are many things you could sacrifice to reduce RAM overall,
Yeah.
but yes.
Well, the reason why he was asking, which kind of sporting his question here, his theory a little bit, is that basically he was saying, can we look at the memory size difference from hardware 4 to hardware 5 and say the model size is probably going to be this much bigger? Go ahead.
Yes, but I would caution against making the second leap, which is the quality will improve by that same proportion, because the eyesight's getting better. And if we look at the RAM increase, it was roughly proportional to the pixel size increase. It was about 50,
Okay.
I think it was 50% less. And then that's made up by the navigational data and the audio that they're pulling in.
Okay. Well, Luce is back on the board. Luce, would you like to elaborate on your question? Do you have a follow-up question for Meta?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. So, is it possible that instead of storing memory at 36 Hz, in the future Tesla can store the memory at 18, for example, which seems sufficient? And is it something difficult to do, or is it just a choice you need to make?
Think of these as like blocks, passes that you go through. Nothing to do with crypto blocks. Ignore that. But like a block of data. So you're operating one block at a time. The amount of data you can process in a given block is dependent on how much RAM you have. In a given block, you're doing a whole bunch of matrix multiplication in parallel. Let's just think of it like that. So you're limited by how many multiplications you can do. When you do bed mass, you have to do multiplication first, then addition, etc. So you're also limited by the formula that you're trying to process. So if there's addition steps, you have to kind of finish your multiplication, then you can do your addition. But overall, generally speaking, there is a requirement for RAM, but don't overthink it, is I guess what I'm trying to say. There are mathematical tricks you can do to work around it. If this is specifically asking like the difference between hardware 3 and hardware 4, it takes more work, but yeah, like Shor's algorithm, there are many other algorithms that can help you work around it. To a degree.
Okay. So yeah. So thanks for the answer. But what I asked was, let's say Tesla tomorrow decides it wants to double the context length, and to do that, it wants to store the memory instead of at 36 Hz, it wants to go to 18. Is it something easy to implement, or it's difficult?
When you're saying 56 hertz, I think you're referring to the 36 hertz here, correct?
Yeah, the 36 Hz V13 will have on hardware 4.
Yeah, so the hertz, just take divide 1 over the hertz, and that gives you, and multiply by 1,000, that gives you the milliseconds of reaction time. I'm just going to talk in reaction time because I think that's more easy to understand. They have up to 5 to 10x capacity to increase the reaction time, and then you'll be at Formula 1 versus regular human reaction time. The faster the reaction time, the smoother it will feel. So if the car decides to jerk the wheel a little bit to the left, a little back to the right, and it's doing it at a fast enough speed, we won't notice it. It's kind of like smooth animations, right? Like if you're looking at a flip book and it only had 13 frames per second flipping through it, and there was one messed up drawing, it's gonna be very jarring. If there was 30 frames and you flip through all 30 frames in a second, and there was one messed up drawing, it's a little less jittery. At 60, it's almost imperceptible. And above 120, it's certainly not perceptible by a human that there was even anything wrong in there. So you're getting benefits by having higher and higher reaction time, but at some point, being super, super high reaction time is also a waste of resources. So I don't think they want to get to a point where they're necessarily being even higher and higher reaction time than where they are today. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you need that fast of a reaction time.
Lucia, does that answer your question?
Well, honestly, my question was, is it easy to go from 36 to 18 if you want to? Like, that was my
Yes,
question.
but
Oh,
I don't think you need
okay.
to.
Thank you, bro.
You're trading things off. If you go from 36 to 18, you're going to have to double something or half something. So you could cut the number of pixels you're processing from the camera in half. You could reduce the number of layers you have in half, or you could actually no. Those are probably the only two big things you can do.
Okay. Interesting. So you said Tesla has room to slow down reaction time 5 times and still be in line with a Formula One driver.
Correct.
So why is the reaction time 5 times with the Formula One driver today?
Because the model does make mistakes. Unlike the Formula One driver, who probably has a really high degree of not making errors, the model does make mistakes. So you have time to rectify that mistake.
Okay. But still, like even if you're making like even if the Formula One driver was making mistakes, that's like amazing reaction time, obviously. Like, isn't that enough?
Yes. Think of like
Okay.
the worst scenario: the car is slipping on water, and you need to like take corrective action to prevent an accident. It might just be a good idea to have 5 to 10x the reaction time than a human.
Okay.
I think Elon
So
has also
number one
just stated.
priority. Yeah.
I think Elon has just also stated he wants the cars to have 10 times better capability than humans. One way to think of that is if you have 10 times better reaction time than the average human, which is what it's working out to be, that theoretically gives you that capability. But if you have the exact same reaction time as humans, then I don't know that you can theoretically be better than them, at least in that scenario.
Okay, got it. Yeah, this conversation is really helpful, and I want to just read what this Drew Soul said. Drew Soul says, "I have to point out to Yaman that your AI amateur spaces has increased your knowledge, understanding, and use of correct language for FSD conversations. Well done." And I think that's true. And I recommend people to also listening to the AI amateur spaces on Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Monday nights, AI amateurs. We talk about anything non-Tesla, all AI topics non-Tesla, but it really helps Tesla conversations as well. You can find recordings on the YouTube channel through the link at the top of our screens. Very good. Let's move on with the list here. Meda, what do you think about, so you weren't here when we were talking with Omar, improved camera cleaning. What does that mean?
It could mean multiple things. There are the wipers, but also on most digital cameras, there's a small keep sensor that you can shake the lens. Sorry, not the lens, the ISO sensor itself. You can shake it to get dust off and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, Omar said basically the wipers.
They said they're going to do better in inclement weather, so it could be related to that. I think someone also did a video a while back about like whether there's heating capability on the glass. That could be another thing.
Heating capability on the glass.
The lens to get water
The
off of
lens,
it.
but
Yeah.
don't we already have that? Yeah, our
Yes.
AI4 cars already have that? Okay.
Right, but to make better use of it, to like when to turn it on could be one of the things they're changing.
Okay, got it. And then we weren't sure about what they meant, what Tesla AI team meant by redesign controller for smoother, more accurate tracking.
Big one. So this will be a question for Wes to figure out more specifically what they might be referring to in terms of terminology. But one interpretation could be the controller they're referring to here is the, you know how we say the output is controls? Well, the controller is the thing that takes those controls and actually executes on them. So improving the controls, one of the Alberta Plan observations for like those unfamiliar, it's like a paper on the things you have to do to get to AGI, is that you need your input frequency and your output frequency to be at the same frequency. So, or at least a multiple, so you can kind of get them to the same frequency. So let's say the steering wheel controls was only able to rotate the wheel every 15 seconds, sorry, 15 times per second. If they could get that up to 36 frames per second, adjustments per second, that means that now you're in sync, and so everything starts to perform a lot better. So when they say they've improved the controls for smoother, more accurate tracking, that could also imply that in the context window that they have increased, they're also tracking those controls. So it's not just what happened in the last 15 seconds that I saw, but also what happened in the last 15 seconds that I remember about the wheel.
Okay, great. Omar, anything to add on that front?
No.
Okay, and Meta, the other one that we were not 100% on was efficient representation of maps and navigation inputs.
Yeah, so that probably refers to compression, right, to some degree. Reducing the amount of data that is being consumed from the map side. That usually means you can throw away like the inverse of attention really need. Forget some shit you don't need in there. Reduce that size, which then allows the model to not be confused by bogus noise.
Okay, I want to ask
You know, honestly,
Go ahead, Omar.
I was thinking about like Emma when they mentioned this and how, in Waymo's Emma research paper, they talked about just using Gemini as an LLM and getting it to output some driving predictions. And they're like, we just pass in the image in image space and we pass in all the navigation data just as like a text prompt into the model. And then it's able to generate these driving outputs. So I think we're kind of like moving towards an architecture, and this is kind of like performance prohibitive today, but we're kind of like moving towards this general architecture where you can kind of just like prompt the model with stuff, and whether it's navigation, lane instructions, whatever, maybe even other sort of like modifiers of the driving characteristics. And maybe they're moving towards something like that where they have some different representation, maybe even a text-based representation where they can pass these things into the model in a more general way.
I think the biggest hint, and it's the one you skipped over, Yaman, is the audio inputs for better handling of emergency vehicles. If they have audio inputs coming in, they would have to be aligned to the same window. That means 15 seconds is almost enough for you to say, hey, I need to get out here. Can you turn left? Stop. There's a car up there. I just need to pick up my friend. Open the trunk for me, please. You can kind of see how this is starting to build in the capability, the skeletal structure for them to start having you talk to the car while the car's processing things. And I don't think this will make its way to hardware 3.
Makes sense. Here's what ChatGPT says about efficient representation of maps and navigation inputs. And Meta, maybe you can tell us if this is correct. Tesla AI team refers to the efficient representation of maps and navigation inputs as the process of transforming raw data from the vehicle's cameras into a streamlined 3-dimensional model of the surrounding environment.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of, as I was reading this. So why is it so wrong here?
It doesn't know Tesla enough. When it says maps data, they
because
mean
it's a
external
professional
maps data.
bullshitter.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of noticing with these ChatGPT. Like sometimes I use ChatGPT to I think it's good at grading speakers. I find that the feedback that I would have for a specific speaker is very much in line with ChatGPT says. But if I use it to generate questions, debate questions, poll questions for the space, it's too superficial. Like I think people have come to expect a certain level of quality and deep level of discussions in this space. And if I ask those questions, like that would be like, I think most of the audience can answer those questions. So
are you using advanced or pro?
Yeah, 4.0.
You should consider maybe the prompting strategy. You need to be far more verbose about your constraints and what you expect, and just write like a whole essay paragraph of what you want.
I mean, at that point, I can as well just fucking ask the question.
Yeah.
I mean, your audience is expecting you to be creative, to think about what's happening, and to actually come up with something that's new that hasn't been discussed before. A model that's just trained on the internet and is trained to generate the most cliche stuff possible. I mean, it doesn't know humor yet. You know, you try and ask it to generate something funny, and it's like so cheesy, and you're like, oh my God. And you know, there is definitely progress to be made in those areas. But yeah, they're good at a lot
Yeah.
of things.
The model
Yeah.
probably thinks every time we make fun of Machine's mom that it's a safety constraint issue. So, as we all know, Yaman definitely doesn't
Right.
use any safety when it comes to Machine's mom.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh boy. All right. Cool. Yeah, it's got its limitation. I mean, I do use chatbots increasingly when running this space and providing summaries. With summaries, for example, it does a great job for patrons. I still read the summaries and change a couple of things here and there, but it saves a lot of time for me. Anyway, that's more of a AI amateurs type of topic here. All right. Anything else we didn't discuss on the Tesla AI teams? Let's see. Yeah, this is a great conversation. We're going to continue with this conversation. Thanks to Steve and World of Warheim, Westerheim. We're going to continue for another 15 minutes beyond because of their super chats. But before that, we're going to take a break for the 400 people in the space right now to head over to the YouTube channel through the link at the top of our screens and hit the like button. The likes are really important on these videos in growing the YouTube channel. It introduces the YouTube channel to new viewers. And we have to get to 10,000 subscribers to get to contribution margin positive so that we can scale the channel, scale the content, have more deeper conversations. Like, for example, once we get to 1,000 likes per episode, 10,000 subscribers, what we can do is have a dedicated hour for FSD discussions, have a dedicated hour for Cybertruck discussions, have a dedicated hour for non-Tesla AI amateurs type of discussions, or have a dedicated hour for hardware for AI. Like we can discuss GPUs, so that if you're not interested in that space, you don't have to show up to that one, but you can show up to the Cybertruck one. And this goes for speakers and listeners, so we can have more resolution in the space's content, in the channel content. But before we can get there, we have to first hit this contribution margin positive, and that's going to happen when we hit 10,000 subs, 1,000 likes per episode. So you can help us get there quicker by heading over. We just crossed 200 likes. Let's see if we can get to 250 in the next 30 seconds as I read these audio ads for our sponsors. Okay. This episode is hosted on a MacBook Pro provided by Paymore. Paymore is a great sponsor. I just switched my MacBook Air for a MacBook Pro so that I don't have to put ice water on my MacBook Air to host these heated debates. The laptop I have now can handle so much more than the earlier versions. So please support our sponsors by following Paymore on X. At Paymore, you can buy the latest gadgets at great prices, sell or trade your used electronics for cash or store credit, and recycle old broken devices responsibly, helping reduce electronic waste. Because Paymore believes that the best technology doesn't have to come at the cost of our planet or your wallet. And our sponsor, Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories, innovative charging solutions, stylish interior upgrades, protective gear, and cutting-edge tech add-ons. Use promo code TSLA Live at checkout to receive a special discount on your next purchase. Thank you, Joa and Paymore, for sponsoring Tesla Live and the Tesla community. Thank you very much for the 215 of you who took action to support Tesla Live on YouTube. Really appreciate it. Meta, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna. We lost the train earlier, but I was gonna say, to me, the most exciting piece here, and I'm interested in seeing how they continue to push things out, is the context window increase and the model size increase. But as I've thought more about the 4.2 data increase, I'm suspecting they're talking about now with each release, they're doing 4.2 times more data for distillation. That might actually be what they're referring to, because the 4.2 doesn't fully map to the context window and everything else. If they're referring to it on the inference side, this seems like a weird thing to put in there. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they're referring to this 4.2 is coming from the teacher model down to the student model, which would imply large safety gains, or sorry, not safety, less error.
Okay. Luce.
So I wanted to ask Omar if I also Meta, if he has, if they have any prediction of what the city miles for critical intervention will be with V13, if they want to speculate. Right now on FSD tracker is like
now this is a bad question, Luce. This is a bad question because you won't be able to verify it unless Tesla shares it, and they haven't shown really indication of sharing absolute numbers. So this is a bit of a waste of time. We're going to move on from this. Meta?
Yeah, I was just going to say that tracker is tracking a subset of all the issues. Tesla's targeting far larger numbers, so the denominators just don't add up. You can't really do apples to apples there.
Yeah. Okay. Tesla says we have integrated several of these improvements and are already seeing a 4 times increase in miles between necessary interventions compared to 12.5.4. This lays the foundation for the V13 series, and we're targeting to ship V13 to internal customers by the end of this week. So does that mean employees then?
And
okay,
some people who actually did it
employees.
at the Warner Brothers studio as well, though.
Yeah. Wait, sorry, say it again?
1010. They just had after V13 out there.
Yeah. When do you think Omar is going to have it?
I was actually hoping he would get it today, because, Omar left the board, but I'm sure if he sends him an email and says, hey, I did pretty good with V12.1 and it was pretty dangerous, you could probably give you 13. And I would move around my calendar if I could experience it also with Omar. So I would move it around to go experience it.
He says so TSLA says this lays the foundation for the V13 series. We're targeting to ship V13 to internal customers by the end of the week. Most of the remaining items are independently validated and will be integrated over November in a series of point releases. We're targeting a wide release of V13.3 with most of the above improvements for AI4 vehicles around Thanksgiving. I mean, this is a huge incentive to buy AI4 vehicles. You can get a new vehicle with all the discounts, and before, hopefully, the tax credit doesn't expire. But if Trump wins the election, then the federal tax credit may expire by the year end. So I think Tesla is set to have a massive Q4 here in terms of deliveries.
Yeah, they're doing free FSD transfer right now. So if you bought FSD, you can transfer that, get FSD on the new car for free. They're doing 0% APR. They have the $7,500 point of sale credit, which if Trump wins, that's likely going to go away. You can take advantage of it this quarter either way. And I mean, if he ends up winning the election next week and people realize the credit's probably going away, good luck finding a new Tesla. Good luck. Good luck finding the one you want. So I would honestly just order it today, just in case. I mean, you can always just cancel and lose the $250. But if he wins, there's probably going to be a lot of people who are trying to claim that tax credit before the end of the year because it's a really good deal.
Exactly. We have other things to talk about. We have 15 minutes left. If you want to extend the duration of this space, go head over to YouTube and send a super chat. $1 means one more minute on the space. Okay, we have let's talk about so just a couple of items we got to hit here. Ford idles F-150 Lightning for 2 months, and in my opinion, I think they're going to end that production soon. The lower they use the production capacity, the worse their profitability is, and it's already not a profitable vehicle. So I don't really see a future for Ford F-150 Lightning. Toyota partners to develop AI with NTT. They plan to spend $3 billion by 2030. To put that in context, Tesla spends billions every quarter. And that's all you got to know on that item. Li Auto produced results, positive results, but to keep in mind, Li Auto is also a hybrid vehicle producer in a way, extended range EVs. So Tesla, as far as I can tell from publicly available data, Tesla is still the only producer of profitable BEVs, battery electric vehicles, pure EVs at scale. Even BYD, I don't think is in that bucket here. Why?
Hi, you guys. Taylor. Omar, for the whole year that they've been testing the employees on robotaxi, how do these guys keep a secret?
Well, if they don't, they get fired. And these are just regular cars with human drivers. It wouldn't look like anything unusual to most people, but they're hailing it using the internal Tesla rideshare app.
Okay, good. We have other things to hit, and only 10 minutes left. Uber beat top and bottom lines, but the market crushed Uber stock by about 10%. On Uber is an important company because in the context of robotaxi future for Tesla, I think there's some things we can learn about these details. Gross bookings increased 20% year over year. Record EBITDA, $1.7 billion, up 55%. So the CEO was on CNBC saying this is a business that's growing top line 20%, bottom line 50% plus. Trip volumes increased broadly, led by international markets. He mentioned that delivery habits are sticky. So when people start delivering food, taking food deliveries, they tend to stick with it. He also gave some numbers on their membership. 25 million members, up 70%, 70% year over year. They're running merchant funded offers. So, if you buy from McDonald's or whatever, you get a discount. So those are funded by the merchants. I think that's also possible for Tesla in the future, Tesla robotaxis in the future. He says that's running at all-time highs. Uber, interestingly, is allocating more and more of its free cash flow to buying back shares. I thought that was really interesting as well. There's some rumors that they might be buying Expedia, the company that the CEO used to run. And he didn't say yes or no, but he basically said no. He said, not looking to do big deals right now. At this time, we're focused on organic growth. Okay. Now, we also need to talk about any comments on that front, Omar? Or Matt?
Nope.
Okay, great. Big tech earnings. So this week is huge on Microsoft earnings, Meta earnings, Google earnings, Amazon, Apple. It's a critical week for earnings season. Meta announced already, and a lot of these companies are seeing their stock prices plunge. We should talk about this in the AI amateurs too, but Microsoft today is down 5%, Nvidia down 5%, Amazon 4%, Tesla down 3%. All chip stocks are down, Oracle down. I mean, big tech is just getting crushed. Meta down 5%, Google down 2%. Omar, what do you make of this reaction to this week's earnings? Because a lot of these companies are beating on the top line and the bottom line, and yet their stocks are getting crushed. What do you make of it?
Well, I guess it's a bad day. Sometimes Mr. Market's not in a good mood. Today's one of those days. I could probably research more into what it is. Maybe we'll find out, but I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, the earnings seemed fine to me. They're showing some pretty crazy numbers. across the board, certainly for the Mag 7. Strong growth in many areas that matter. A lot of AR, VR spending for Meta, which is kind of questionable. But generally, the earnings were fine. But the market's not feeling like it's in a great mood for whatever reason.
Okay, we're gonna dig into these soon, but here's what I want to say something real quick. We have a few dozen and a couple of hundred people who are very passionate about Tesla Live. Okay, and one of them is proven to be Nick L on YouTube. He just tipped $60 on Super Chat, which means we can go up. We can go up to 3 hours today, maybe even beyond if the conversation quality is still high. But just want to say thank you to Nick L, who also tipped $100 the other day to keep the space going. No Clue tipped $10. Steve tipped $10. And we have other tips as well. So we're gonna go on, settle in, everybody. Stretch. Go to the bathroom if you need to. We're gonna keep going as long as the quality of discussion is high, and with the current speakers, I think it's gonna be high. So if you have any questions, deep thoughts, we're looking for technical, original insight. Leave it on YouTube live chat. Reply to the space. We're going to keep rolling here. Thank you to those who support Tesla Live. And if you can't contribute financially, head over to the top of our screens through the link at the top. Go over to YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. It is immensely helpful. It's very important that every person, just like you check in a coat when you go to the restaurant, make it a habit. When you come to the space, head over to YouTube, hit like, and listen wherever you want to. But it's very important that you do that. Okay. Meta, what do you make of these? Oh, wow. Drew Soul just gifted 5 value analyst memberships on the YouTube. So the 5 most engaged will get free memberships to the channel today. Likes, subscribes, shares, live chat engagements, comments below the video. They're all helpful. YouTube automatically assigns these free memberships after 24 hours after the episode is over. Meta, any comments around these big tech earnings beating top line, bottom line, and yet the stock prices are plunging? Kind of general thoughts around Microsoft, Meta, and preferably around their preparedness for an AI dominant future.
I don't know what factors could be at play. It could be macroeconomic, it could be other things, but I suspect as markets tend to be short-term thinking, they might be not happy about increased spending in AI. They may be seeing like the same users that were being served ads or Facebook clicks or whatever. I don't know what Microsoft's unit of serving is. All those units might be seeming like they're getting more expensive because there's more compute required to do it with AI. I personally disagree with that short-sightedness because I think as the quality of content or things goes up, people use it more, society gets better, there's more money to be made down the line. But it is what it is. Mr. Market is temperamental.
Yeah. Let me ask you a more pointed question. Which of the big tech do you think is best prepared to monetize AI?
I have to pass on that question.
Okay. Omar, would you like to answer that question? Other than Tesla. So to kind of give, so the reason why I'm
maybe
asking this
Google,
question
I
is because,
guess.
yeah, maybe. The reason why I'm asking this question because Gene Munster was on CNBC today talking about this, and Gene follows big tech companies. It's definitely a person I follow to kind of keep an eye on what he's saying. He pointed out that Microsoft Copilot is not necessarily generating, like, the adoption of AI features in Microsoft Copilot is not very high yet. But if you look at Meta announced that their daily active or monthly active users for Meta AI is now 500 million. And so Meta seems to be kind of at the forefront of monetizing AI a little bit better. And but you said Google, so can you elaborate on that?
Why? Yeah. Why did you say Meta? How are they monetizing it?
Well, Gene was saying that Meta AI now has 500 million monthly active users. So, I guess not a direct monetization here, but it improves the user experience on on their platforms.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone's actually paying for it. But maybe it is increasing retention, time spent, that type of thing. Certainly, their Llama 3 models have been incredibly disruptive in the fact that they release the weights and have open licensing. So you got to give them credit for that. Google is just obviously a titan of the web. They have large advertising businesses, their cloud business. Um, they're really monetizing this, I think, on multiple vectors. Whether you look at their advertising business, their cloud business, the growth in sort of cloud spend as people do AI training, inference, the sort of unique assets they have there. Um, of the Mag 7 names, I mean, Apple, Meta, you know, um, they're probably monetizing it through their business relatively strongly today compared to some of their peers.
Metaphor. Oh, Omar, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Meta may be having a question here. A connection issue. I see his hand up. Do you see his hand up?
Yeah, maybe just bump him down and bring him back up again.
Okay. Meta?
Sorry, I think I was having audio issues there. I was going to ask if you guys want to talk about Emma, or is that taking the
Yes,
length of
I
this
really
discussion?
wanted to talk about that. I was about to say that too. Yeah, so Google Waymo released a new research paper yesterday called Emma. So maybe Meta, you could talk about it a little bit and we could discuss it.
Do you want to set the stage, or I guess I could set the stage a little bit. A long time ago, and there will be difference of memories here, but I remember having conversations about how there are two different approaches: the Waymo approach and the Tesla approach. Waymo said, "Let's just put all the hardware you could ever possibly need, cameras pointing in every possible direction, make a few prototype vehicles, get out there, collect all the data, get this thing working. Then you can ablate the sensors until you get to a point where you're like, okay, now this vehicle works." And you can basically use the models with more sensors as a teacher model and the models with less sensors as a student model. And you can put, like, back in the day, I think when Omar took one of his first Waymos, there was like a data center running in the back of the car, right? With like just whirring, spinning machines. And of course, that was enough compute for them to run multiple drivers. And so you could have the teacher model running with all the sensors, and you could have a bunch of student drivers, kind of like we have shadow mode in Tesla, but like more shadow modes. And you can use this kind of evolutionary approach to get to a point where eventually you reduce the amount of sensors. And we had conversations about, like, have they ever reduced LiDAR? They haven't reduced LiDAR. Well, this paper shows clearly, even though Gen 6 still has LiDAR on it, maybe we're going to see a Gen 7 without LiDAR.
Omar?
Yeah, so I mean, Google just published a research paper yesterday. So this is a research paper. It's not a product. It doesn't mean this is driving their car. But it was a really interesting research paper that really got me thinking about a few different things. So what they've essentially done, they call it Emma, an end-to-end multimodal model for autonomous driving. And so they've actually taken Gemini, their LLM, which has multimodal capabilities, and everybody sort of noticed that, like, you can put in an image of a road, even like a dash cam clip, and you can feed it to an LLM like Gemini or OpenAI, and you can ask it questions, and it can really answer questions with its entire background knowledge of the world that it's got from reading the internet. So what Google really did here is say, can we actually get this Gemini LLM to generate outputs for autonomous driving? And the answer was yes. So what they were able to do is essentially just take in an image of the driving scene and then say, okay, I want you to predict what the vehicle trajectory should be, or predict what objects are in this scene or other things. And then they were able to have some success doing that using their sort of Gemini LLM. The thing could explain why it was making decisions based on chain of thought reasoning. So that's kind of really interesting. It seems like LLMs and autonomous driving, they are kind of on a long-term collision course. Right now today, they said, well, look, if we process this through the LLM, we can only handle 4 frames per second, right? So you talk about 36 frames per second from 8 cameras, that's like 288 frames per second. And then, this approach can only handle 4 frames per second. So it is
9 times
something that
slower.
you'd need a lot of compute to be able to like process an LLM. It's not really feasible today. Certainly not feasible to drive a Waymo car. And, I think they did like Gemini Nano. They did like the smallest version, and the time was still really large. So you really need a lot more compute, but it seems like there is a lot of benefit to being able to leverage this background knowledge of the world. It seems like, yeah, that is obviously something a self-driving car should have. It should have that knowledge of the world that an LLM has. And then the ability to explain its decision making, to say, oh, well, there was a biker there. And this is like one of the big problems with autonomous driving. If it can actually, have a chain of thought and you could audit that chain of thought and explain it, I think that's really interesting too. We're not quite there yet in terms of, I think this being viable to actually do, but it is interesting. And, just sort of like the fact that Google is even researching this, it was kind of just amazing to hear. Like, they were sounding like Tesla fanboys a little bit in this research paper, just kind of saying, like, well, it doesn't really scale well. Having an end to end model, like, could yield a lot of benefits. It's like, you think? And it was also interesting that they, trained this model. They didn't use LiDAR at all, which is obvious because, if you've ever used an LLM, it asks for an image as input, not for a LiDAR scan as input. So it would have been too difficult to add in LiDAR. So they're just like, okay, well, we're just going to do it with vision for now. But it kind of highlights the point. They could probably figure out a way to get LiDAR in there somehow, but like they said, look, there would be an asymmetry because there's so much more vision data. So it just so happens that deep learning and the deep learning techniques that are necessary to solve self-driving are far more suited to vision than to, trying to incorporate LiDAR for, a number of reasons. The fact, the availability of sensors, that type of thing. So I think it's not that LiDAR is not great. LiDAR is useful. I mean, hell, they found a city in Mexico with LiDAR, but for deep learning, vision is just much more deep learning native. And I think that's why you're seeing Google now doing research into a pure vision end-to-end model based on Gemini.
Can you hear Yaman?
Yeah. Hello.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Come on, Elon. Elon, let's go. Fix these bugs. What is going on, Elon? Focus too much on Trump.
Okay, can I respond to that, Yaman?
Yeah, I called your name like 5 times.
Okay, I couldn't hear you. Sorry, I can only hear you now. The important things, like a 9x difference is significant, but it is very, very promising because the thing you have to remember is the model that was used to train this version of driving is the same model that could be used to train a robot. It's the same model that could be used to be a chatbot. It's the same model that in theory someday could do things like AlphaFold. So this is kind of a different approach, right? They're basically taking something that's closer to AGI and teaching it how to drive versus starting with a purpose-driven driving model and teaching it how to understand the world. So it's a very promising space. And again, whenever we talk about model compression, just remember 9x is not that bad. Like you can certainly squeeze 9x out. And there's a quote here from one of the Tesla engineers. Let me just pull up the right person. Yunta, who basically talked about how it took a lot of insane efficiency on the hardware side to go from photons to um, inference with zero latency. That's a huge deal. And you can imagine the same kind of things will happen with Waymo down the line. I think this is a good indication of the direction Waymo is going, because we did see a 40% sensor reduction. You can kind of continue to see this. Waymo does have a lot of rich data from users. So this is why I think we have to kind of constantly think of it like this could be a two-party race, but the one advantage Tesla definitely has is hardware construction. And that is the thing that gives them the big leg up. It's way harder to build a factory at this point, I would argue, than to build the software. But it is very, very interesting when we start talking about robotics, because that space requires a better understanding of the world. And Waymo or everyday robotics, some part of Google could have a leg up on the software side, just like Waymo had over Tesla for a period of time.
Thank you. I'm going to have to reflect on this part of the conversation and then have follow-up questions tomorrow. Unless if anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question about this topic, I need to read this paper too. This is what I love about some of these, some of our spaces, that sometimes we get so technical and deep into it that I need some time to think.
It's written pretty understandably. Like if someone listens to these conversations, they could probably understand a lot of what's in the paper.
Okay, good. Anything else? I think Meta, somebody was going to ask you tomorrow, yesterday, and they didn't get a chance. I forget who that was. When do you think Waymo is going to have? I think it was Mario. This at the beginning of the space. Is Mario still here? Let's see. Yeah, there he is. Maybe he can come up and ask this question now. In the meantime, Lauren.
Yeah, I was curious, the announcement, I think just a couple days ago, of X.AI, that they're recently rolled out some feature where it can look at a picture and interpret it. Is that a step in a similar direction that they could possibly use in the future if they wanted to make a deal with X.AI?
Meta?
Yes. The core thing I want people to keep in mind here is I think all of these things are good for training, probably, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to inference. Like the Emma paper really relied on chain of thought. Chain of thought is like more and more what's happening now is you take the chinchilla paper and you see the scaling laws, and what they're doing is they're trading off on time, reaction time, to get higher quality. You can do that in the cloud to get a better, higher quality teacher model, but in a real-time safety, real world AI situation like the car, chain of thought is probably not going to work, in my personal opinion. So I think it's great to get this like professor teacher model that knows the world, and once you're there you can distill, and you can ship something to production, but it doesn't mean that's how it's going to appear in the cars themselves.
Lauren?
If would this possibly be useful for a scenario similar to what Waymo is using human interventions for now? Like, say the car gets stuck in some crazy construction or parking lot situation and can't really figure out how to get out of it, and it kind of calls home and a person selects something on a screen. Could this be something that's a secondary level before it has to go to a human?
Meta?
Yes, that's actually the perfect example, right? So when like Yaman was asking, if you could have dynamic context length, that'd be ideal. If you could have, well, we don't know how to do dynamic context length. We do have the ability to do dynamic reaction time. So you can do that by going to a larger model that's slower, but better. And so in an area where you don't have to have high speed decision making, you could. So if you're stuck in an area and you need to figure out how to navigate out of it, that kind of stuff you could defer to a model that is either running in the cloud, gives hints down to the car, but the car still has to do the dynamic driving, or you could theoretically have another model on the vehicle that's running and it just takes longer to plan and it just drives slower. Because your reaction time is also a function of the speed at which you're driving.
Very good. Thank you, Lauren. Mario,
Listen,
would you, Omar?
yeah, I mean, I think this is not a product. This is not something they're shipping today. It's research, but research can tell you where we're going as an industry, what people are thinking about. And Tesla investors need to demand that we make an investment in X.AI. X.AI is rumored to be raising another $5 billion. Tesla should provide all of that, I think. Um, it's becoming clear that multimodal LLMs and their vision capabilities are very powerful for self-driving. And really, generative AI in general has been a game changer for training these models, creating synthetic data, so many things. But today, it's not really something you can run in the car in real time. Increasingly in the future, I think it's going to be powerful for a lot of things. I mean, right now, in terms of like understanding the training set, think about how powerful these vision LLMs are for understanding the training set, slicing up the data, understanding what's in the image. You can do that offline, not running in the car in real time, and really understand the image. So these capabilities are going to be more and more important. That doesn't necessarily mean that Tesla should go and train an LLM today. It's not necessarily going to make FSD 13 all that much better than just using, Grok or OpenAI or whatever. But I think it would be very wise to build an equity stake in X.AI. I think the equity would appreciate. And I think we want to have a seat at the table, a stake in this company, and potentially eventually just acquire it and absorb it into Tesla. So I, as a Tesla investor, and I think other Tesla investors should really be making sure this X.AI deal happens.
Wave.
Hi, guys. Wondered if you talked about Meta's announcement on robotics and sensing today.
No, we haven't talked about that yet. So let's stick with the topic for now. Mario had a question earlier in this space that we didn't get a chance to. It was related to Waymo. So now is the time to ask that, Mario.
So Waymo currently, according to ChatGPT and Perplexity, is doing between 100,000 and 150,000 autonomous taxi rides every week. Question is, when will Tesla exceed that number? If at all. Obviously, I believe they will, and in the next 3 or 4 years, certainly they will. But interested to hear what Omar thinks and maybe Meta.
Omar.
Well, Waymo has 700 cars. So when is Tesla going to be giving more than 150,000 rides a week? How long is it going to take them to make 700 cars once they achieve autonomy? I mean, they're making right now 40,000 cars a week. They have plans to expand that significantly. That's about 5,700 cars a day. It won't even be lunchtime by the time they make more autonomous cars than Waymo if they started producing them today. So when Tesla launches driverless and launches their rideshare next year, it's going to very quickly eclipse Waymo.
Thank you. Yoda.
Yeah, for sure. I would say week one of Tesla launching will make Waymo's numbers look like child's play. It will look like a research project.
Okay, well, you had your earlier hand up earlier. Did you have a question or a comment that's unrelated?
Yeah, it was back when we were discussing X.AI. Yeah, I think if you just kind of think about like the parallel with human intelligence, is a sentient human important to the act of driving? It's probably beneficial, but I think the real value will perhaps not be with autonomous driving, but when Optimus is launched, XAI's multimodal capabilities will really be utilized there because Optimus will be kind of among humans in all the different contexts in addition to roads.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Yoda, what did you think of the video that Gail shared and Elon reposted about Supermicro? It was basically a Supermicro commercial, but they showed XAI cluster. Did you have any specific takeaways from that video?
Yeah, it's basically. I mean, we all know the accounting stuff that's going on, so I won't really talk about that. But from a technical standpoint, it really showcases that for AI data centers, the future is direct liquid cooling, and so. That may not be apparent. People might be just looking at the racks, but really all I saw was the direct liquid cooling infrastructure. They're trying to take direct liquid cooling from 1% of all market share of all data center servers to 15% in 2 years. And so, yeah, right now it's really tricky for them with the accounting thing, but you could see that their technology is selected by X.AI.
Okay, thank you, Yoda. Meta, did you have any specific takeaways from that video? It's a 20-minute video. Supermicro talking about XAI cluster.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, Omar, did you?
Yeah, of course. That cluster looks amazing.
Okay. And they mentioned in that video that this is the biggest cluster. Is that true? I didn't realize that was the case.
Yeah,
Okay.
NVIDIA confirmed. This is the biggest training cluster. I mean, others have more GPUs, but they're not all wired together like this is. So obviously the training jobs you can do are limited by the size of the cluster. This is the largest single cluster there is right now, and they're working on doubling the size.
Yeah, they mentioned in the video too that this is phase one, and they're already starting to build the next phase. So double. I don't think they said double. That's quite a bit. Yoda?
Yeah, and something to note is you can't just count the number of GPUs in the clusters either, because direct liquid cooling, DLC for short, will essentially save energy because it allows the chips to run longer and without being worried of overheating. And so there's roughly a 30% sort of equivalent of increase in compute because it could run 30% more.
Thank you, Yoda. Yoda is closely follows TSMC, NVIDIA, SMCI, and other companies in the space. So it's good to have you on the board during this conversation. Dylan XYZ.
Oh yes. Oh, thank you for giving me the mic. I actually want to say that the complexity in which we human beings, the intelligence that we use to navigate this reality is actually different from large LLM, like the capability of what they can actually take. Um, and I can actually be correct with this that the the complexity of the human's brain has to do with not storing information locally, which is the most complex thing about the human's brain. So we are able to navigate through reality differently. So I can't really see
Yeah.
AI.
So Dylan, one of the rules that we have in this space is new speakers are limited to asking questions in 10 words or fewer. Is there a question in your future?
What is it?
Okay. Meta, what is it? Meta?
I don't know how to answer what is it as a question.
No, that was the question asked. All right.
It
I
is
want to
a
ask.
word.
Exactly. Okay. No Clue, who's a great supporter of the space, sent a super chat earlier, asks Amanda, is it possible to have multiple models on a car at a time and have specific ones sitting dormant for certain situations?
Yes, in fact, they did this for a long time when they had two stacks between the highway and the city and even parking lot. I don't have evidence for this, but I would assume what they were doing was hot swapping the highway and the parking lot ones based on what was coming up. So the city one would stay, and then if you were about to go on the highway, obviously you'd have the highway one loaded, and if you were entering a parking lot, it would have the parking lot loaded. And they do have two different chips, SoCs, which allows them to do that. And generally speaking, I don't know how high their interconnect is between the chips, but I could see that continuing to stay advantageous. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did some kind of chain of thought reasoning on one of them for low speeds, parking lots, and jams. Getting out of jams is usually a parking lot slow speed kind of situation. And then the other one was not built that way. But they haven't really said that they're doing that yet. I would expect it to be more of a V14 if they get there.
Okay, thank you. Yoda?
Is it just me, or does Meta and Omar also realize that when that 30K vehicle launches first half next year, it's going to be running the V13 series, and essentially it will be unsupervised?
Just to, as an asterisk, Yoda predicted that Tesla would start a robotaxi service by 8.8. Sorry, Yoda, I got to do this just like I used to do it for myself with the Tesla will triple in 2022. Meta?
Things can be delayed, Yoda.
Yeah, Ashok mentioned that this is going to be future complete for FSD unsupervised. What do you make of that comment, Meta?
Feature complete coming from Ashok means that he believes the vehicle will have all the capabilities. And I think that is a fair argument now that they have increased the context window. Remember, we would talk about this, and I was always saying the context window is required to, in my opinion, be feature complete. The reverse, park, all that capabilities, obviously the car already had those, but now he's basically saying the model has the ability to communicate all these different things. That does not mean that the quality will be there, but it means now all they're doing is improving the quality. They're not adding new peripherals and new capabilities. I would put an asterisk there because they may still need to do something that they haven't anticipated, but it's a statement from Ashok saying he thinks now it's just a iteration and data problem and training compute problem, not a implementation of the infrastructure problem.
Well, that's when they accomplish everything they said in that tweet with V13. I mean, that's still
correct.
Several months away. And then somebody said, what about honking? I want my car to be able to honk. And he said, okay, we'll add that to the list too. And I'm like, how is that not on the list?
Yeah, you need to be able to honk. I've actually experienced this with a Waymo. If a Waymo arrives and you go and stand in front of it and you're stopping its way, it'll honk at you.
I mean, if they're adding these things to the list based on replies from anonymous accounts on X, I don't think we're anywhere close to feature complete. But maybe Omar disagrees.
That's not the hardest feature. Like, let's say feature complete is like the things that require like a lot of engineering work. Honking is not a lot of work.
Okay, Yoda? Yeah, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, when he says feature complete, he basically just means it has everything it needs to give unsupervised rides. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be reliable enough to do unsupervised rides, but all the functionality's there. It can pull over, it can pick people up, it can reverse, it can make 3-point turns. It can do all the things it needs to do. I mean, honking, you're really getting into, does it really need to honk? No, but it could be helpful in certain situations to get it moving faster. So that one Waymo has implemented already. I think that's an important one to do until the phantom honks start coming and people come into this space and complain about that. But it is one that they're going to have to do. You know, you're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel there for features. At that point, you could really run a service without a driver if the DMS allowed it, and it would be able to do everything it needed to do.
Ethan.
Yeah, I'm looking at the transcript of Elon saying that hardware 3 cars would get a free upgrade if they don't meet the safety standards of FSD unsupervised. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking about robotaxi in the future, is there an explicit promise that these cars can all join the robotaxi network? Let's say they had to go to hardware 4 for all these FSD license holders.
Yeah, I mean, it's something where if they do upgrade the hardware, they're going to do it once the other cars have achieved unsupervised FSD. So if hardware 4 or hardware 5 or hardware 6 has achieved unsupervised FSD, but hardware 3 cannot, then they'll provide an upgrade to, or at least try to, right? I mean, this is just kind of something they've said they want to do. They'll try to provide a computer upgrade and allow you to do it. You know, Elon said they're going to try and make it right. That's sort of if they achieve unsupervised, but hardware 3 can't do it. Now, in the interim, the newer hardware is going to be performing a lot better than the older hardware. So there's the promise, which, you know, you can't really do much with. And then there's the reality of AI4 just running the software better.
You know, we always look at these companies as if they're like completely different things. But just like, you know, in like football leagues, basketball leagues, Silicon Valley can be pretty incestuous in the sense that people move between companies fairly often. Ideas move back and forth. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley care more about solving the problem than necessarily which team. Thing you have to understand is Tesla could do the same thing Waymo did. They could ablate the hardware to say, run it as if it's hardware 3 in shadow mode. You got enough hardware out there, you've achieved it. You can now have a teacher model and a student model running side by side. You could see, okay, do we really need to upgrade the cameras or do we just need more memory? It might make our lives easier if we have the same activation functions and it's just a matter of the cameras being the same. They could create a hardware 3.5 that is like, okay, much more similar to hardware 4, but has environment and stays in the same space as hardware 3. There's a lot of options, but it doesn't make sense to solve for those options until you've actually solved FSD.
All right, Lucia, did you have another question?
I wanted to say my 2 cents about Tesla investing in X.AI, if it's still in topic. So basically, my gut feeling about X.AI is not totally positive. First of all, we know that X.AI would like to license Grok for the Tesla cars, but it's not an official deal, but X.AI asked for 50% of the revenue or something crazy like that. Then you need to add the fact that X.AI didn't want to start in Tesla in the first place, so Elon had to make a different company altogether. And now you basically are saying, referring to Omar, that Tesla should invest in X.AI because obviously it's going to appreciate and it's going to be useful in the future. But I want to remind that X.AI needs to sell their product. Like it's not on us to buy whatever they do. Okay, we can buy from ChatGPT, we can buy from Meta, whatever. We can buy from many people. They need to make it very convenient for us. And I like the Elon approach until now, for at least, to make each company do what's best for itself. So there should not be like crossovers, in my opinion.
Omar?
Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of resistance and pushback from people like this who say, I don't like Elon. I don't trust him. Why is it not the same company? And they're going to avoid buying into the biggest AI training cluster because of this sort of rationale. I mean, first off, Tesla has a record $33 billion in cash. They are increasing. There's going to be more cash coming in. What was the last round at? I think 25 billion or something like that. Now they're raising at a $45 billion valuation. In the time we've been sitting here thinking about it, the valuation of the company has almost doubled. Now, we can have the equity will appreciate. Just the value of the asset itself, the data center they're building with 100,000 GPUs, going up to 200,000 GPUs. The teams have already been working together. I mean, it is not only a investment, it is a strategic alignment, right? They don't necessarily want to go and build a 200,000 GPU cluster themselves. I mean, hell, if we're building a 200,000 GPU cluster, that should be going towards FSD. But if we can just buy 20%, then we have a seat at the table. We're probably on the board. I mean, hell, we have the same CEO. And eventually, if it makes sense, you can buy the rest of the company. I would say give us a right of first refusal. If the company's raising money, we should have the right to say Tesla will give you that money first before anybody else. And it can be an independent company. They can give their founders equity, all that good stuff. But there needs to be a relationship there. This is, not some handout to Elon or something. This team is actually executing at a very high level. And it would be good to solidify the relationship. Right now, it's informal. They should be partners. Tesla should be an equity investor in X.AI. They should collaborate with, Tesla's in-house silicon efforts, all that stuff. They're sister companies. And I think it would be a big mistake not to take an equity stake as early as possible with a right of first refusal.
Luce da Meta.
So obviously, I like Elon Musk and I trust him. Okay. So for example, if you said the first round at 25 billion, I would have agreed that it's a good valuation. Why? Because it basically doesn't count in the cost also of the infrastructure, etc. You are so hyped up about the cluster, but the cluster, bro, in 1 year, their new GPUs is going to be released that are way more powerful, and whatever X.AI has now, it's not gonna be valuable in the long term, and the valuation is way higher. Or it's way higher than the first time. And secondly, I think I trust Elon. If Elon didn't buy the first time, I think he will not buy this time at an higher valuation. At least that's what I want to say.
Meta.
Yeah, Elon stated he didn't want to put AGI in a place where he didn't have control. That equation hasn't changed. The compensation conversation hasn't settled. Unfortunately, I don't think we get to, as Tesla investors, own a chunk of X.AI until that is resolved. It sucks that that's not been resolved. I think as investors, we should focus our energies in getting that resolved. But to Omar's point, even if people are concerned about, oh, he did it this way, he did that way, Elon has the latitude to spend $5 to $10 billion, however the heck he wants, when it comes to running the company. He has the latitude to figure out if he wants to reward other people with it. I think the board should have the latitude to figure out if they want to reward Elon with it. And given that he hasn't been given his compensation, I think this maybe one of the nice ways to actually compensate him for the fact that he still hasn't received any compensation for the work he did.
Okay, we have 3 different angles to this topic, it sounds like. Lucia, let me ask you something. You said you would be for the transaction if the valuation was lower. Is that right?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Yeah. So for you, it's just a matter of valuation.
Yeah,
And
also
what's okay? Go ahead. Interrupt me.
so also when I invested in Tesla, okay, I didn't invest at peak price, even though I'm bullish on Tesla and I think it's a great future. So every investment to be great, it has to be on the right price.
Okay, I understand. And what work have you done to estimate the true value of X.AI today?
Well, what has changed since they made the 25 billion round? What has changed? Very little, in my opinion. Grok is still offered on Twitter, on X, sorry, for the premium subscription. It's still worse, let's say, than ChatGPT or the competitors. And they have this cluster that they still haven't done anything with that. So this is the reason why I'm saying that they are the ones that they need to acquire somebody who use their software, their product. It's not that we have any obligation. We can buy from ChatGPT, Meta, whatever. We can buy from Meta.
Okay. But you kind of answered my question with a question. I said, what work did you do to estimate the true value of X.AI? And you said, what has changed since the last time? So you haven't done any bottom-up intrinsic value type of estimation here, have you?
No, it was a rhetorical question in the sense nothing has changed. Nothing haven't changed much.
Well, their X.AI cluster came about, right? They have more employees. Their employees are more. The company has more history at this point. I'm not saying one way or another whether the valuation is correct, but if it's just a matter of valuation for you, and you haven't done any work on the valuation, then it kind of reducing your credibility, because Omar's point is more around strategic reasons. He says we should have a seat at the table with an equity investment, and that's a really good reason, right? Because earlier in this space, actually, we discussed how the companies who buy these GPUs have different priorities than Tesla FSD does. Mehdi explained that earlier, and other companies may not, for example, have a huge use for varying context size. Right, Meta? I mean, you can word this a little better. I'm getting a little tired, but so if, for example, there's a specific way or specific type of model that Tesla needs to train, or Tesla needs Grok to be able to handle, and if you don't have an equity stake, you may not be able to communicate that or you may not be able to influence that decision as just a customer of X.AI. Do you appreciate that strategic benefit of being an equity investor, Luce?
No, I don't, because as far I'm concerned, like they need to be appealing to whatever companies. They need to be appealing to Waymo, to Tesla, to Cruise. Like there is a market for it. It's their job. It's not ours.
I think you're conflating finding customers for the business with investing in the business.
Yeah, those are very two different things. Let's go to Meta.
Yeah, the other big part here is you just see a paper comes out from Waymo that says, hey, look, we can use chain of thought reasoning and we can achieve all this stuff, and we take in vision, and boom, we're only 9x away from what we would need to run in a car. Granted, that's with images, not with video. Put all the caveats you want. 10x, make it 100x. But that's very, very threatening in a sense if you're trying to compete on robots and you're trying to compete in other ways. And you may not want to believe it, but wishing doesn't make it true. Elon stated many times it was hard to find people who would be willing to work on AGI if they work directly for Tesla. He wants to retain control over that component. He wants to have control over that. So Tesla could own a chunk of it, and you could say, okay, fine. Elon has a smaller stake of the vehicle side of the business, but he has a higher stake on the AGI side of the business. That allows you to have this kind of like dual share kind of situation where he has higher control over how the AGI direction goes, but not on the vehicle side. That seems fine. I think people are letting this entitlement or this feeling of, hey, I think you did something wrong, you wronged me, get in the way of trying to reason and understand where the person's actually maybe coming from. And we have seen a lot of potential bad things happen with AGI. There's a lot of fear around that. Put all that aside. If you have ownership in X.AI, you can influence it to say, you know what? Tesla has not built, it doesn't have the capacity or the compute to spend on building a chain of thought reasoning platform. Grok already has achieved it. They have the talent necessary for it. Why don't we hire them through an equity stake to do the things we need, like prioritizing getting chain of thought for parking working before they maybe get chain of thought for code and website building working, because they probably can get a lot of customers to do the other.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I mean, the writing is on the wall. This is looking to be so key in the future, right? And if Tesla were to spend $10 billion a year training LLMs today, their financials would look no better than Rivian's, right? So they have to choose their battles, right? But at the same time, this is really key. If they can throw in, a minority stake, 20%, I think this would be extremely wise and that investors would make money. They would simply make money and they would be better positioned strategically. So, I can understand people's apprehension. Some people are like, well, why didn't he do it within Tesla? Well, if he did it within Tesla, first off, he wouldn't be able to offer equity stakes to these engineers. And two, it would be insanely costly. Tesla needs to train these models for something that can run real time in the car. Training an LLM that can't run real time in the car doesn't make sense today. But having this equity stake, I mean, just look at what X.AI has accomplished. They've built the largest training cluster. They've looked at this and said, okay, let's go straight to the bone. Let's vertically integrate. And Jensen said, holy cow, look at how fast these guys set this thing up. This is supposed to take months with all our other customers. These guys did it in like 19 days. They started training. And this is really a foundational ability. And you've seen them catch up to GPT-4 way more rapidly than anyone could have expected. If someone said, hey, Elon's going to start his own LLM company and it's going to catch up to OpenAI, have pretty close ELO scores. Nobody expected that. Now they're building out even further. They're going to 200,000. They released Grok 2, which is significantly better. They're now training Grok 3 and getting ready to release that. They've added multimodal capabilities. I mean, they have executed extremely impressively, I have to say. And when you look at this paper, like the Emma paper, the writing is on the wall that this is a key piece of the puzzle. And I think if we don't get this deal done now, we're going to kick ourselves over it later.
Let me, Mehdi, let me ask you, why do you think this deal hasn't been done yet?
I think there's some apprehension after the Solar City deal, perhaps. We need to see a lot of shareholders asking for it. There probably needs to be like a shareholder petition. Maybe we have to wait till the next shareholder meeting for something like that to happen. The other reason why I think it didn't happen, and I think a lot of people are rewriting history, is X.AI was not a sure shot. There's a lot of risk in doing what they did. They isolated the risk. Had it failed, all the investors would have been complaining that Elon tried that. But now that it has succeeded, they'll want it to be rewarded as if they took the risk back then. And there wasn't the appetite, in my opinion, to take that risk. When he launched Optimus, it's not like most of the major shareholders were saying, yes, yes, let's go ahead and do this. They clearly weren't rewarding the market value of the company in that sense. And Elon wanted to have control over the outcome of AGI. I think that's very fair. And I can see, and I think a lot of people may not appreciate this. Many people don't want to work to build something that might be a nuclear bomb and destroy a lot of people. For AGI, that means working for someone who you believe ethically and morally will do the right thing. You see this with OpenAI, you see this with a lot of people leaving SAM. It just is a reality. You can't shake it.
Okay. We're going to leave it there. This space has been going on for 3 hours. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to continue tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central. Please, on your way out, head over to the YouTube channel through the link at the top of our screens and give this YouTube channel a like and subscribe. Help us grow. Thank you for all the super chats today. Meta?
One request for all your listeners on YouTube who listen to this after it's gone up. You need to hit the like button to get to 1,000 so Yaman can make fun of Machine. If you don't get it there, you're not going to get to listen to that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Meta, for the shout out. And I will chat with you guys tomorrow. Take care.